Seated at my desk, I checked my watch. It was almost 4. Soon I'd head home to kick off the weekend. This one was extra special, marking 20 years since I married Katie. I couldn't wait to whisk her away for a romantic weekend at our lake house. I picked up Katie's photo, a cherished gift from years ago, reminding me of our love. By the way, I'm Thomas West, but you can call me Tom. Katie and I fell in love in high school and tied the knot shortly after graduation. She insisted on waiting until our wedding day for closeness. And she was right. It made our honeymoon unforgettable. My parents were thrilled for us, giving me $100,000 and keys to a townhouse to start. Dad explained it was just the beginning of a $5 million trust fund he set up after my birth. He rarely spoke of my biological mom, who passed when I was young, remarrying soon after. Rejected from the military due to diabetes, I pursued college with Katie. We dreamed of our futures until Jim, our son, arrived earlier than planned. Despite challenges, Katie became a teacher while I entered the business world, joining Ryder Industries. When I shared the news with Dad, he seemed proud but distant. I sensed something was amiss, but I refrained from pressing him. That's why I ultimately left the corporate world behind. For the next 16 years, life followed a typical routine. We worked, cared for our family, and enjoyed annual vacations. Due to time constraints, I quit martial arts classes about 5 years into marriage. Though Dad suggested exploring career options, I didn't dwell on it. Overall, Katie and I were content, despite the usual marital ups and downs. However, recently, I noticed changes in Katie's behavior. Initially, I attributed her mood shifts to the end of the school year and her reduced workload. She seemed withdrawn and occasionally sharp with me. I tried discussing it, but she brushed it off. Meanwhile, I was in the running for a VP position competing with Alex Marlowe. Keeping the news to myself, I didn't think it influenced her behavior. Then it hit me. Our son Jim's graduation and acceptance to West Point might be causing her anxiety about an empty nest. To lift her spirits, I planned a surprise anniversary getaway. As I pondered this, my secretary's call interrupted. It was about a meeting with Jake Henderson, the CEO, likely regarding a promotion. I rose from my desk, tidied my tie in the bathroom mirror, and headed to the elevator, ensuring my smartphone was set to record the upcoming meeting. Arriving on the 15th floor, home to the company's top brass, I made my way to Henderson's suite, where his assistant Brenda welcomed me. "Mr. Henderson is ready for you, Mr. West," she said, her grin piquing my curiosity. Henderson's voice invited me inside as I entered his office, taking a seat opposite him. Harvey, one of Henderson's guards, poured me bourbon, a gesture of familiarity with my preferences. Henderson, relaxed in demeanor, took a sip of his drink before addressing me with a smile. After exchanging pleasantries, Henderson praised my politeness and inquired about my family. I assured him all was well, mentioning our son's recent departure for West Point and our upcoming 20th anniversary celebration. "Married for 2 decades?" Jake inquired, offering congratulations. "I called you here not to mess with you. I like you. Let's discuss my upcoming promotion. It's between you and Marlowe. The board needs to gauge your flexibility, your response to stress, and your dedication to our goals. Understand, a manager's day doesn't end at 5. "I get it," I replied. "What specifics does the board seek?" "They want to witness your reactions firsthand," Jake explained. "They've reviewed your records, but they need more." "I'm not sure I follow," I admitted. Jake grinned, sipping his bourbon. "You'll get it," he assured. "How's your marriage?" "Solid, Mr. Henderson," I affirmed, sipping my drink. "Why do you ask?" "If it's as strong as you claim, cancel your weekend plans," he instructed. "Your wife should understand." He signaled Harvey, who ushered in Lenny Jameson, accompanied by Katie. She wore a revealing dress, surprising me with her appearance. The dress barely covered her backside. Though she glanced my way, she seemed unaware of me. Observing her medicated state, I noticed something white in one nostril. "Katie," I addressed her. "What's going on? Why are you dressed like that?" She remained unresponsive, her eyes glazed. Turning to Henderson, I demanded clarification. "What's happening? Why is she here like this? She's clearly medicated. What did you give her?" Henderson chuckled, admitting to medicating her with a potent concoction. He gestured for Lenny to expose her further, revealing her bosom. I attempted to rise, but found myself paralyzed, realizing Harvey had medicated me too. Henderson's sinister grin widened as Lenny undressed Katie completely. Ignoring my protests, Henderson proceeded to engage in carnal acts with her, her glazed eyes betraying her medicated state. Furious and struggling against Harvey's grip, I glared at Henderson. "I'll eliminate you," I yelled. Henderson smirked. Is that how you speak to family? He taunted. And in front of your dear wife. She won't be my wife, I snapped. And what do you mean by family? Henderson revealed our shared parentage, shocking me. That's not true, I protested. Why? For many reasons, he explained. Firstly, as CEO, I have executive privilege. Secondly, I've always wanted to dominate my younger brother. You didn't think I hired you for your skills, did you? He revealed his calculated manipulation, claiming it was a long-term plan to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his. Have you planned this all along? I demanded. Of course, he admitted. It's the long game. Now your fate and your wife's are in my hands. He outlined his intention to seek revenge for past grievances, shocking me with his twisted motives. You're sick, I accused. Henderson shrugged. Maybe, he conceded. It is what it is. Here's the plan, Tom, he began. No divorce. Your wife now serves me, financially and personally. She's my exclusive companion, accessible anytime, anywhere. I'm whisking her to New York for a board presentation. Relax. She'll return, albeit perhaps disheveled. You won't get away with this, I retorted. He chuckled. Done deal, he countered. You're powerless. He signaled Lenny, who struck me, apologizing. Just business, Mr. West. I awoke in a hospital bed, machines humming around me. Dad, exhausted, sat nearby. A nurse tended to me, offering ice. Dad explained I'd been unconscious 4 days since Friday night. 4 days? I echoed. It's Tuesday, Dad confirmed. You were dumped at the ER. What happened? He asked, concern etched on his face. Later, upon the doctor's arrival, I acknowledged him. Good afternoon, Mr. West. I'm Dr. Pierce, he greeted. I'm glad to see you with us again. How do you feel? It's like I was hit by a truck, I replied. Everything hurts. I have no doubt, he concurred, noting my injuries. You've been pretty banged up. Nothing broken but some bruised ribs and a small bruise. We were worried about a concussion. After his examination, he outlined the plan. We'll do x-rays and keep you overnight for observation. If all goes well, you can go home tomorrow. My dad called the police, I mentioned. They want to speak with you, he informed me. Afterward, Detective Blackstone introduced himself, eager to hear my story. I recounted what I could, then remembered my phone. Did you find my phone? I asked my father. Yes, he said, handing it over. I noticed unfamiliar text messages and decided to check them later. I found the audio recording and played it for the detective, capturing everything, including the sounds of the assault. I focused on what occurred afterward. Okay, get him out of here, Henderson ordered the guards. Take him to the hospital and say you found him there. Got it? Got it, boss, Lenny affirmed. We heard movement as they dragged me, then their conversation as they placed me in the car. Careful, Harvey cautioned. I don't want blood on the seats. He's a real pain, Lenny chuckled. Aren't they all? Harvey laughed before the recording ended. We have hospital security footage, Ryan explained. They threw you out of the car before driving off. EMTs found you and brought you inside. The car is registered to Ryder Industries. I informed HR, Dad added. Henderson already put you on sick leave for a week. Any word from Katie? I inquired. Dad shook his head. None, he replied. I've been trying to reach her, but no luck. We'll issue a bulletin, Ryan declared. Do you have a recent photo? Yes, I confirmed, retrieving my pictures. Okay, he agreed. Send this to me along with the audio recording. I'll forward the photo to the NYPD and issue a warrant for Henderson and his thugs. Do you want to press charges? Absolutely, I affirmed. Definitely. Then we'll proceed, he assured. Just relax and let the professionals handle it, he advised. Okay, detective, I acknowledged gratefully. Thank you. We'll keep in touch, Ryan promised, handing me his card. Call if you remember anything else. After he left, I turned to my father. Is what Henderson said true? I inquired. Yes and no, he replied. His father had his way with your biological mother, but she was already pregnant. After that, I filed for divorce and an alienation of affection lawsuit against Henderson. We couldn't do a DNA test back then, but we all have the same blood type. Dad said he wouldn't bore me with all the details, but things at home worsened. My biological mother turned to drinks and medicates, eventually dying from an overdose 6 months after I was born. Damn, I reacted. The lawsuit against Henderson and Ryder was ongoing, Dad revealed. But we settled out of court, using the money to set up your trust fund. I couldn't disclose any details due to the agreement. About a year later, I met Patricia, Dad continued. She loved you from the start, insisting on adopting you after we got married. Unable to have children, she considered you her own. So how did you know I was really your son? I asked. Remember the motorcycle accident when you were 16? He queried. Yeah, I recalled. Well, he elaborated, after I was injured, I requested a DNA test at the hospital to confirm our relationship. And? I pressed. The results showed over a 99% likelihood that I'm your father, he explained. It means your biological mother was pregnant with you before Henderson's involvement. For me, you're my dad no matter what, I assured him, bringing a smile to his face. What happened to Henderson? I inquired. Dad informed me he died from a stroke around the time I entered college. His son stepped up as the new general director. I had hoped the younger Henderson had learned from his father's mistakes, but I was mistaken, Dad explained. That's why you weren't thrilled about me joining there, right? I questioned. He nodded. Yes, he affirmed. I wished to tell you, but couldn't. I pray I have it now. It's not on you, Dad, I reassured. I can't fathom how Katie could fall for his nonsense after all this time. It's baffling, I remarked. She may have been medicated, but something feels off, I pondered. Why was she there and in that attire? Just then a knock sounded at the door. Yes, I called out. Brenda, our assistant, peeked in. May I come in? She asked timidly. Certainly, Brenda, I welcomed her. What's up? She entered, holding a vase of flowers and a large card. We all pitched in and got this for you, she explained, placing the flowers on the nightstand. She handed me the card. I'm really sorry about all of this, Brenda expressed. Did you know what Henderson planned? I inquired. I knew he had something with your wife, she admitted. But not this, she added, pointing to me. What went down? I probed. That morning he gave me a company card, told me to fetch your wife, said she was expecting me. He instructed me to take her out, get her a revealing dress, and then to a salon, Brenda disclosed. He also insisted that she get a bikini wax. Aria completed a Brazilian wax, Brenda recounted. I had a pretty good idea of what he meant. This isn't the first time he's pulled something like this. So your boss is using you to groom his girls? Dad questioned. Brenda's face flushed red, and she wisely averted her gaze. Did you know he medicated her? Dad pressed. He medicates all the women he sleeps with, Mr. West, she admitted. He loves to experiment. Has he ever medicated you? Dad inquired. She nodded. One time, she disclosed. He gave me just a small amount, she continued. Said it was only a quarter of the normal dose. Kept me going for about an hour. Do you know how much he gave my wife? I interjected. She shook her head. No, I don't, she admitted. He mentioned giving Katie 3 times the usual amount, I informed her. Her eyes widened, and she covered her face with her hands. Oh my God, she exclaimed. I had no clue. Your poor wife must have been out of her mind for hours. I bet she didn't even realize you were there. This stuff really messes you up. When I walked into your office, you knew what was going to happen, didn't you? I probed. She nodded solemnly. I knew, she confirmed. But I didn't expect him to be so cruel to you, honestly. Do you know where Henderson and my wife are now? I asked. Last I heard, they're still in New York, she replied. Would you be willing to talk to the police, Dad? I asked. I'll do whatever I can to help, she promised. She glanced back at me with tears in her eyes. I'm truly sorry about this, Mr. West. Just one more thing, Brenda, I added. What's going on? She inquired. Did my wife have any idea what was going to happen? I questioned. She nodded. I'm pretty sure she had an idea, Mr. West, she replied. I know Mr. Henderson has been in touch with her quite often in the past month or so, inviting her out to dinner multiple times. They've had long lunches. I'm not sure if anything happened between them or not. He never disclosed it to me. But do you think they were involved? I pressed. It's highly probable, but I can't say for certain. I'm not privy to all the details, she admitted. You seem to assist Henderson with things like this frequently, correct? Dad inquired. Quite frequently, she admitted quietly. So you condone his behavior? He probed. She shook her head. You misunderstand, she clarified. I'm a single mother with a child who has special needs, and Mr. Henderson compensates me generously for my assistance and my discretion. Well, your silence is what led to my son ending up in the hospital this time, young lady, he retorted, his patience waning. She took a step back as he glared at her. Mr. West, I truly didn't know they intended injury to your son. I would have warned him if I had known, she defended herself. Dad reclined in his chair, silently observing her. Brenda, the police detective will be reaching out to you regarding this matter, I informed her. I advise you to be available and fully cooperate. Understand?" She nodded. "I understand, Mr. West," she affirmed. "All right," I said, "and please convey my gratitude to everyone for the flowers and card." "I will," she promised, dabbing at a tear in her eye. "Once again, I'm sorry." With that, she turned and exited the room. After the door closed, I turned to my father. "That sheds some light on things," I remarked. "Katie has been acting a bit off since school ended. Initially, I thought it was because Jim had gone to West Point." "We'll uncover the truth," he assured. Another knock sounded, and a hospital attendant wheeled in a food cart. Dad grinned and rose. "Dinner time," he announced. "Better head home before Mom sends out a search party," he joked. "Take care, son. Rest up. See you in the morning." "Thanks, Dad," I replied. "Say hi to Mom for me and tell her I love her." "Will do, son," he affirmed. "And hey, love you too." We fist bumped and he exited. The attendant smirked at Dad's departure, then served my meal. It smelled decent, and hunger gnawed at me after days without eating. I devoured the meatloaf and potatoes, relishing the mushroom sauce. Though not up to Mom's or Katie's caliber, it sufficed. Even the broccoli, which I usually avoid, tasted all right. After finishing dessert, I sipped coffee and checked my texts. 4 messages awaited, each with a video. The first, from Friday, read, "Enjoy. Bet you wish you weren't here." Unfamiliar, I hesitantly opened it. Katie stood before grinning men, her dress akin to the one Henderson forced her to wear. Recognizing the board members, I braced for the worst. They stripped her and she complied. Anguish brewed. It'd bolster the lawsuit. Summoning courage for the next message from Saturday morning, regret filled me as Katie frolicked with men. The third, late Saturday, depicted her with multiple partners. The fourth, from early Sunday, diverged. Katie and Henderson stared into the camera. Her bloodshot eyes and dark circles revealed torment. Henderson sneered. "This is your wife's new life," he taunted. Turning to Katie, he commanded, "Tell him who I am, honey." "Jake Henderson is my master," she stated, her voice devoid of any emotion. "That's correct," he confirmed. "And what's your new role?" Henderson inquired. "I am my master's undressed love-making toy," she declared. "I engage in carnal activities with whomever he commands, whenever he commands, and however he commands, as frequently as he commands." "Very well," Jake acknowledged. "And convey to that idiot that he won't ever touch you again, you betrayed man," Katie asserted, pointing a finger at the camera. "You'll never lay a hand on me again." Henderson chuckled at her remark before addressing the camera. "And remember, don't cause trouble, or the next time I have Harvey and Lenny talk to you, you might not wake up. See you later, loser. Goodbye." The video concluded. A surge of emotions washed over me. Hatred, anger, sadness, disappointment. I couldn't believe what I had just witnessed and heard. It seemed evident that he had manipulated her. I glanced at the wedding ring on my finger. It held no significance anymore, so I removed it and tossed it onto the nightstand. Perhaps I could sell it for a few bucks at a pawn shop. At that instant, I was resolved to divorce Katie. I didn't care if Jake approved or not. Furthermore, I was determined to make him suffer. But how? Alienation of affection? Lawsuits were a possibility when my father divorced, but not anymore. I entertained thoughts of damaging that despicable fool, but in all honesty, he wasn't worth jeopardizing my freedom for. I contacted Ryan and briefed him on the videos and Henderson's threats. He requested that I forward them to him and assured me he'd be in touch. Following his instructions, I powered off my phone. I contemplated reaching out to Kathy, but concluded it would be futile. I placed my phone on the nightstand and turned on the TV, hoping to distract myself from what I had just witnessed. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep and found myself dreaming of happier times when I had a loving and faithful wife. The next morning, I awoke to the sounds of nurses bustling about my room, checking my vital signs and monitoring the equipment. 2 of them escorted me to the radiology department for additional x-rays before returning me to my room. Once back, an orderly brought me breakfast. Shortly after I finished my bacon and egg breakfast, Dr. Pierce entered my room with good news. "Everything went smoothly, and you're clear to go home," he informed me. He prescribed medication for the pain and provided a set of instructions. "Discharge paperwork will take about an hour, so why not give your parents a call to come pick you up," he suggested. "By the time they arrive, you should be ready to go. Take care of yourself and make sure to schedule a follow-up appointment with your regular doctor within a week." "Thank you, Doc," I replied. "I'll do that." After he left, I contacted my parents and shared the positive news. About an hour later, they arrived at my room. Mom enveloped me in a hug, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Oh, Tom, I'm so sorry you had to go through this," she expressed. "How are you feeling?" "Could be better, Mom," I admitted. "Well, I whipped up some of my lasagna for you and kept it warm in the oven," she informed me. I always adored my mother's lasagna. It was rich with layers of cheese, mushrooms, and meat filling, a taste sensation unlike any other. I looked at her with gratitude. "Thank you, Mom," I said sincerely. "Your lasagna never fails to brighten my day." "I'm glad, son," she replied. "Your father filled me in on what happened, and I'm furious. I have half a mind to give that woman a piece of my mind." Dad and I exchanged a knowing glance and chuckled. There was no doubt in my mind that if she were here, Mom would have taken Katie to task. "Any updates?" Dad inquired. I briefed him on the videos and Henderson's threat. "Videos?" Mom questioned. "Trust me, Mom, you don't want to see them," I cautioned. "They're beyond awful." "I guess you'll need the name of a good divorce attorney," Dad remarked. "Yeah," I agreed. "There's no way to overlook what she did or is probably still doing. Plus, I need to break it to Jim. It's going to devastate him." "All right, I'll make some calls," Dad promised. Just then, a nurse entered with my discharge papers and instructions. Insisting I use a wheelchair, she wheeled me out while Mom and Dad walked alongside. At the loading dock, I slid into the back seat. Dad drove us home, stopping at a pharmacy so I could pick up my pain medication. I noticed my car parked in the driveway when we arrived. "Your mom and I retrieved your car from Ryder on Saturday," Dad informed me. "Katie's car is still in the garage." We entered the house, and its emptiness without Katie became painfully apparent. The aroma of lasagna wafting from the oven lifted my spirits a tad. "I hope you don't mind, but I tidied up a bit yesterday afternoon," Mom mentioned. "It was getting a bit stuffy." "Not at all, Mom," I assured her. "Thanks for everything." Just then, we spotted a dark sedan parked outside. I recognized Ryan stepping out of the driver's side, accompanied by another man in a suit. I welcomed them in. "Detective Blackstone," I greeted. "Please, come in." I held the door as they entered. Ryan shook my hand, and I introduced him to Mom. "Can we offer you gentlemen something to drink?" Mom offered. "Coffee? Soda?" Ryan declined. "No, ma'am, but thank you," he replied, then turned to the other man. "Mr. West, this is Detective Hawthorne from the NYPD Homicide Department." I was taken aback momentarily, but extended my hand to Hawthorne. "Please, have a seat," I invited, and we settled in. "Homicide?" I echoed. Hawthorne nodded, presenting a photograph. Katie's face was recognizable, but she appeared lifeless, her complexion unsettling. "Can you confirm the identity of the woman in this photo?" Hawthorne inquired. "That looks like my wife, Kathy," I confirmed. "But she was alive early Sunday morning. I have a video." "Did she have any distinguishing marks or tattoos?" Hawthorne probed. "Yes, a small dolphin tattoo on her upper right thigh," I recalled. "She got it on a dare 15 years ago." Hawthorne glanced at Ryan and then back at me, his expression somber. "I regret to inform you, Mr. West, but it appears that your wife may have been homicide," he stated. "Homicide?" I exclaimed. "How? When?" "That's what we're investigating, Mr. West," Hawthorne replied. "The coroner is still examining her, but the initial assessment suggests she died from a massive heart attack." "But wouldn't that rule out slaying?" I questioned. "Well, her body was discovered in a shallow grave in Central Park yesterday afternoon," Hawthorne disclosed. "In my experience, such findings typically indicate foul play. We're awaiting toxicology results, which may provide more insight." "What more can you tell us?" I recounted the entire ordeal to them. Ryan took notes while listening attentively, though he had heard the details before. Retrieving my phone, I played the audio recording and then the video for them. Mom, overwhelmed, burst into tears, and Dad ushered her out of the room, leaving me alone with the detectives. After they finished viewing the footage, I shared Brenda's account. They made notes and exchanged glances before addressing me. "This clarifies the bruises and condition of Mrs. West's body," Hawthorne remarked. Turning to me, he continued, "This woman, Harris, is she on duty today?" "To my knowledge, yes," I replied. "We'll need to speak with her," Hawthorne directed at Ryan, who nodded in agreement. He then turned to me again. "What do you know about the Medicades Henderson mentioned?" "The super ecstasy?" he inquired. "Not much beyond what Brenda told me and what I experienced," I admitted. "The doctor mentioned that the substance they used on me had already left my system." "And Henderson and his associates? Any insights there?" Ryan pressed. "Henderson's private jet departed from New York last night. According to the pilot's filed flight plan, they were returning here, but there's no record of the plane landing," I explained. "Ryder has branches nationwide. He could be anywhere." Excellent, Hawthorne remarked, turning to Ryan. We'll need to involve the FAA and possibly the FBI. I have a contact at the local FAA office, Ryan offered. We can head there after executing a search warrant on Ryder. Hawthorne nodded in agreement. What's the next step? I inquired. If your accounts are accurate, this could escalate into a federal case since Henderson transported your wife across state lines, Ryan stated. We're considering multiple charges against him, including slaying and potentially kidnapping. In the meantime, Hawthorne added, my team will continue their investigation and recover your wife's body. This process may take several days. We'll also detain the individuals seen in the video for questioning. I nodded in acknowledgement. Ryan glanced at Hawthorne before addressing me. I'd like to speak with Mr. West privately, if you don't mind, he requested. Hawthorne nodded at me. Of course, I'll step out to make a few calls. I'll be just outside, he said before exiting the room. He glanced at me before proceeding. I sincerely apologize for all of this, Mr. West, he conveyed. Thank you, Detective, I responded, shaking his hand. After he departed, Ryan redirected his attention to me. Mr. West, Tom, he began. I wanted to have a private conversation with you regarding what transpired with your wife. I appreciate that, Ryan, I acknowledged. I'll spare you the graphic details, Ryan began. But based on what I've gathered, your wife's final 48 hours were utterly harrowing. I consulted with a medical examiner back east, and he corroborated my suspicions. I don't believe your wife consented to what was done to her. I suspect she was subjected to a brutal assault. She was sufferized and exploited by a group of power-hungry individuals. Look, Ryan, I understand your intentions, and I'm grateful, I responded. I truly do. But the reality is Katie and Henderson were involved for about a month before this incident. I'm not entirely sure what transpired between them, but I have a fairly good idea. Katie could have put an end to all of this prior to last Friday, but she chose not to. I don't understand her actions, and now I never will. I understand, Ryan murmured. He retrieved a business card from his pocket and handed it to me. I suggest you consult with Dr. Harmon. She's highly reputable. Give her a call. All right, I'll do that. Thank you, I acknowledged. I'm concerned that Henderson's associates might return for you, he expressed. I would assign officers to protect you, but unfortunately, our resources are limited. However, I'll instruct the dispatcher to increase patrols in your area. Do you own a firearm? No, I replied. He nodded. All right, he stated. In that case, always keep your doors and windows secured. If you suspect anything, dial emergency immediately. I'll remember that, Ryan, I assured him. Just then, Hawthorne re-entered the house. I just spoke with your partner, Johnson, he informed. He's wanted nationwide, and we have search warrants ready to execute. Ryan nodded and stood up. We'll keep in touch, Tom, he said, shaking my hand. Hawthorne extended his hand. I offer my condolences for your loss, Mr. West, he conveyed. Thank you, Detective, I replied. After they departed, my parents returned and took a seat. Are you going to be all right, son? Dad inquired. I think so, Dad, I replied. I have a couple more calls to make, and I'm not particularly looking forward to them. In many ways, that's true. I needed to inform Jim about his mother's situation, and I also had to reach out to Katie's parents. Understood? Dad asked. Understood. If you need anything, just give us a call, all right? Dad reiterated. I'll do that, Dad. Thanks, I affirmed. We exchanged embraces, and I watched them depart. I dialed Jim's cell phone and left a message, anticipating it might take some time for him to return my call. The next call on my agenda was one I dreaded. Kathy's father, retired Marine Colonel Bill Anderson, earned the moniker Bloody Bill for his heroic exploits in Afghanistan, allegedly dispatching multiple Taliban fighters with just a knife. His uniform boasted more ribbons and medals than I'd ever seen. He and Katie's mother, Alice, settled in the country after his military service. I hesitated to break the news of Katie's pass away to the colonel, but we had a good rapport, and he insisted I call him Dad. Summoning courage, I called him. Anderson's residence, he answered. It's me, Tom, I said. Are you okay? He asked, sensing my distress. Not really, Dad, I replied. Katie's dead. Shocked, he demanded details. After a brief explanation, he decided they'd visit at 4 p.m., adding a quip about civilian time. Got it, Dad, I chuckled. And I'll have coffee ready. With that, we hung up, and I sank into my chair, overwhelmed by grief. My world had crumbled, my marriage had faltered, and now Katie, the love of my life, was gone. Despite my disdain for her actions, I couldn't bear the thought of her pass away, unlike Henderson, who I viewed differently. I rose and indulged in my mom's comforting lasagna, a remedy that had always eased my troubles. Cleaning up afterward, I roamed the house, each corner triggering memories of Katie and our life together. Realizing I couldn't remain in this house, I resolved to sell it once everything settled, opting for something smaller. Discovering Katie's phone on the nightstand, I unlocked it with her familiar 4-digit code. Annoyingly, it happened at that moment. Examining her call log, I noticed repeated calls from Henderson and Brenda's workplace, particularly on Friday morning. Scanning her messages, I found an exchange with Henderson from a few months back, lacking significant context. Perusing her emails, I found nothing incriminating. Turning off the phone, I placed it back on the nightstand. Checking the time, I realized it was already 3:45 p.m. I had no clue how much time I had spent on Katie's phone. Knowing the Colonel's punctuality, I headed to the kitchen and brewed fresh coffee, strong, just the way he preferred it. As the digital clock on the coffee pot struck 4 p.m., the doorbell chimed. I knew it was the Colonel, so I welcomed him and Alice inside. "Damn it, son, didn't anyone ever teach you to duck?" the Colonel exclaimed upon seeing my face. "My father tried, but I don't think I ever fully grasped it," I half-joked. "Come in." As they entered, another car pulled into the driveway. I observed a tall, lanky man stepping out and approaching the door. "I hope you don't mind," Bill mentioned. "After what you told me, I took the liberty of calling for reinforcements." By then, the tall man had entered the house carrying a laptop bag and 2 more bags, leaving me wondering what was happening. Bill introduced him. "Ron, this is my brother-in-law, Tom West," he said. "Tom, meet Ron Wiseman. We served together in the Corps." "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Wiseman," I greeted, shaking his hand. "Please call me Ron," he insisted. I glanced at the Colonel. "Ron and his wife have experience dealing with individuals like Henderson," the Colonel explained. "Plus, he possesses certain skills that could prove valuable." "What kind of skills?" I inquired. "I'm an accountant by profession," Ron disclosed. "An accountant?" I echoed. Ron grinned as he set his bags down. "Well, I'm a bit more than just that," he elaborated. "I'm involved with a special task force and have access to information that, as the Colonel mentioned, could be quite useful." "I see," I responded. "Well, please have a seat and I'll fetch us some coffee." Alice joined me in the kitchen and we returned with 4 large cups of coffee. Hot, fresh, black, and strong. Just how the Colonel preferred it. Alice handed him his cup, and after a cautious sip, he remarked, "Not bad, Tom." "Thank you. Now why don't you bring us all up to speed?" I recounted the events up until Ryan and Hawthorne left the house earlier. "You mentioned video recordings?" the Colonel inquired. "Yes," I confirmed. "They're quite disturbing." "I'd still like to see them," he insisted. "Don't worry, after 30 years in the Corps, there's not much that Alice and I haven't seen." I retrieved my phone and played the videos for them. They watched all 4 before I returned the phone. Bill and Alice seemed visibly upset, but Ron remained composed, pausing this video at times to scrutinize the individuals involved. "It's evident she was medicated," Alice remarked. Bill and Ron nodded in agreement. "But with what exactly? I'm not certain," I admitted. "Brenda Henderson's assistant mentioned something about super ecstasy or the like." "And Henderson medicated you too?" Ron inquired. "Yes," I confirmed. "But by the time I was treated at the hospital, it had already left my system." By then, Ron had set up his laptop and connected to the internet. "Those 2 thugs who attacked you?" he continued. "Did you catch them on video?" Ron inquired. "Yes," I replied. I opened one of the videos and paused it so Ron could examine it closely. "Those 2 big guys over there are Harvey Strauss and Lenny Jameson," I pointed out, indicating them in the footage. "Can you send me these videos?" Ron requested, providing his email address. "Certainly," I agreed. "I'll forward the videos to you." Ron confirmed receipt of the files and began analyzing them. "You know those aren't their real names," Ron remarked. "No, I wasn't aware," I admitted. "What are their real identities?" "They're former criminals," Ron disclosed. "They disappeared after their boss, James Brolin, also known as Jimmy the Weasel, was discovered homicide in his own bed. The authorities have been searching for them for quite some time." "How long have they been working for Henderson?" "I believe it's been a couple of years now," I replied. "Why do you ask?" "They've vanished around this time," Ron noted. "Are you suggesting they've made Henderson a wanted man across the nation?" "Exactly," I confirmed. "All right," Ron said, clicking his mouse. "Let's see what we can dig up. I'll let this program run for a while." As Ron's program processed, we continued our conversation. "So, here's the plan," the Colonel interjected. After discussing further, Ron agreed to remain with me until these individuals were neutralized. "I'm not comfortable with you being alone here while they're still out there," he expressed. "Ron, keep me posted as soon as you get any updates on them. All right, I'll take it from there." "Understood, Colonel," Ron replied. And what about you? I inquired of Bill. It's better if you're kept in the dark, son, he replied. Let's just say Marines handle our own business, and leave it at that. Don't worry. Henderson and his associates will face consequences one way or another. You mentioned you're off until Monday due to illness? Yes, I confirmed. What's your plan after this? He probed. I can't remain at Ryder after all this, I stated. I've decided to resign, giving 2 weeks' notice starting Monday. Additionally, I'm considering selling this house and downsizing. I can't blame you, he sympathized. Any update on when Katie's body will be released? It could be several days, according to what Hawthorne told me, I relayed. If you need assistance with final arrangements, don't hesitate to ask, he offered. Thank you, Dad. I appreciate it, I expressed. Bill rose, signaling the end of the meeting. Alice and Ron followed suit. We should head out, dear, Bill addressed Alice. Ron, keep me informed of any developments. Will do, Ron assured. Bill turned to me and embraced me, a gesture that took me by surprise. In all my years knowing him, I've never seen him hug another man. Everything will work out, son, he reassured me. Alice stepped forward after he released me and embraced me gently. I'm truly sorry for what happened, Tom, she comforted. Don't worry about a thing, all right? I won't, Mom, I assured her. Thank you for coming. You're welcome, she responded. And don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything. Shortly after their departure, my phone rang. Seeing it was Jim, I answered and sat down beside him to recount the events. At first, he was taken aback by this news. Dad, that just doesn't sound like something she could do, Jim remarked. I know. It doesn't make any sense to me either, I concurred. Are there any clues as to why she did this? He inquired. No, son, I checked her phone and email, but there's nothing there, I explained. Maybe she has a burner phone somewhere, he suggested. A burner phone? I questioned. Yeah, one of those disposable gadgets you toss away after using pay-as-you-go minutes, Jim clarified. Perhaps she has one hidden that you haven't found yet. My mind immediately shifted to the videos they sent me. They originated from a number I didn't recognize. Maybe it was her burner phone. If so, then no one could trace where she is now. You might be onto something, I acknowledged. I hadn't considered that. We conversed a bit more, and Jim concluded by asking me to inform him when his mother's body would be released for burial. After the call, I mentioned the burner phone theory to Ron. That makes sense, he agreed. If you have the number, I'll see what I can uncover. I provided him with the number, and he initiated another program to trace it. A few minutes later, he had his answer. This number corresponds to a phone purchased here in the city, he reported. As you suspected, it's a burner phone. The number is registered to Ryder and was last detected Tuesday morning in NYC. There hasn't been any activity on it since you received the last video. Any idea where he might be now? I inquired. None, he replied. As far as we know, it was disassembled and disposed of in the river. He returned to his computer, prompting me to prepare a guest room upstairs since I didn't know how long he'd stay. He remained until Saturday, spending much time on the computer. While unaware of his activities, we've grown closer since his arrival on Wednesday. He disclosed being a Marine sniper now working for a federal private task force. Despite his background as a CPA, most of his work involved research. He shared tidbits about his and his wife Amy's interactions with executives, which intrigued me. The previous night, he requested if Amy could join for the weekend, to which I agreed. She arrived Saturday morning, and after introductions, they retreated to the guest room. Giving them space, I occupied myself in the garage for about an hour before returning inside. Ron and Amy were engrossed in something on his computer when I joined. Any updates? I inquired. Yes, affirmed Ron. Firstly, the FBI has taken over the investigation. Secondly, about half an hour ago, I received a solid hit on our targets. All three? I queried. Yeah, they're near Colorado Springs, Ron confirmed. I've already notified the colonel. Then he'll handle it himself. There's something else. What is it? I inquired. I was able to access the official autopsy report on your wife, he disclosed. What does it say? I pressed. According to the report, your wife did indeed suffer a massive heart attack from the chemicals Henderson administered. But that's not what ended her life, Ron revealed. They discovered soil particles in her lungs. What does that mean? I asked. It means she was still alive when they buried her, Ron stated. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Barely alive, but alive nonetheless. I'm sorry, there's more. More? I exclaimed in disbelief. There was also extensive bruising around her private parts, and a toxicology report revealed significant levels of various chemicals in her bloodstream, including ecstasy and cocaine. I'm sorry, Tom, but it appears the last hours of her life were brutal. I can't believe she willingly participated in all of this. What do you think happened? I questioned. From what I've gathered, Henderson and his cohorts likely had quite a wild party, he speculated. Your wife was so under the influence of what Henderson gave her that she lost control. At some point, she suffered a heart attack. Instead of seeking medical help, they likely presumed she was deceased, so they disposed of her by burying her. I sank into a chair, stunned by Ron's revelations. Amy approached and embraced me as tears streamed down my face. Henderson and his accomplices are wanted for slaying, conspiracy to commit slaying, the production and distribution of various controlled substances, and racketeering, among other charges, Ron disclosed. The other individuals in your videos have already been apprehended and charged, but Henderson is the primary target. What do you think his fate will be? I inquired. Ron shrugged. Who can say? He replied. One can only speculate about the workings of the courts these days. The next morning, I was awakened by my phone ringing. Glancing at my watch, I saw it was 4:30 a.m. I wondered who could be calling at such an hour. Answering, I heard a masked voice. Check your text messages, it instructed before hanging up. Opening the message, I found a video attached. In it, 3 undressed bound men were dumped in front of a brick building. Recognizing them as Henderson, Lenny, and Harvey, I watched as a sign was hung around Henderson's neck, confessing to Katie West's slaying. I pondered if the FBI would get involved. Finishing the video, I returned to sleep. 4 hours later, I descended to find Amy cooking breakfast in the kitchen. I hope you don't mind me trying my hand in your kitchen, she said. Ron gets cranky without his morning bacon. Not at all, I replied. I get a little cranky myself without bacon. Help yourself. After she finished, we all sat down to eat. As we finished, there was a knock at the door. Opening it, I found Ryan standing there. May I come in? He asked. Of course, I replied, ushering him in. Introducing him to Ron and Amy as friends of my father-in-law, I offered him coffee. No, I won't stay long, he declined. I just wanted to inform you that Henderson and 2 of his top accomplices were apprehended in Colorado Springs early this morning. That's good news, right? I inquired. Yes, he confirmed. They're talking. There are some questions about the circumstances of their capture, but I assume you're not privy to that. No, I'm not, I asserted. I've been here all night. Ron and Amy can vouch for that. Uh-huh, he responded. Well, I just wanted to keep you informed. Now I'll leave you to it. Take care of yourself. Thanks, Ryan, I expressed as he departed. Turning to Ron, I posed a question. You don't happen to know anything about this, do you? Don't ask, and I won't fib, he replied with a knowing grin. I still suggest giving your father-in-law a call to express gratitude. Nodding in agreement, I retrieved my phone. Anderson, Bill greeted upon answering. Dad, just wanted to inform you that the police paid me a visit, I relayed. Henderson and his cohort were apprehended in Colorado Springs. Well, that's a relief, he responded. Ron advised me to extend my thanks, I added. Did he indeed? Bill inquired. Yes, I confirmed. So I wanted to express my appreciation. You're welcome, son, he replied warmly. I heard you received a call last night. That's correct, I affirmed. That sign was quite the touch. Do you think it gave them a lead? His grin indicated agreement. I sure hope so, he said. We'll catch up soon, son. Take care of yourself. I will, Dad, I assured. Thank you. The next Monday, I resigned from work, receiving understanding but regretful farewells. Then, I visited a realtor to initiate the process of selling our longtime home, bracing myself for the emotional and logistical challenges. A week later, Katie's body was released by the New York Medical Examiner as her parents arranged her funeral. Despite conflicting emotions, I attended mainly to support Bill and Alice, who had been kind to me during this ordeal. Jim managed to take a break from West Point to join me at the funeral, where we shared memories and mourned together. I chose not to divulge Katie's actions to him, wanting to preserve his fond memories of her. Following the funeral, I consulted with a lawyer about potentially suing Ryder, as there seemed to be a strong case against Henderson and the board of directors given their legal troubles. The trial against Henderson and the involved board members felt endless. The U.S. attorney pursued the pass-away penalty for Henderson, while the defense filed numerous motions. I testified about my own experience and listened to others' testimonies. Brenda also testified, revealing that Katie wasn't the only sufferer of Henderson's medicating and exploitation. When questioned, Brenda admitted uncertainty about whether Katie and Henderson had an affair before the incident. Video evidence suggested Katie initially rejected Henderson's advances, but later seemed to consider them. Searches of Henderson's office and home uncovered evidence of Medicaid experimentation. Expert witnesses confirmed that many of the compounds he created were likely intended as date abduction medicates. During the trial, I finally got the full story of what happened to Katie. It turned out that Henderson had kept her alive over the weekend with medicates and drinks. At some point during their festivities, she experienced severe chest pain and collapsed unconscious. The men claimed they checked her but couldn't find a pulse. Instead of seeking immediate medical help, which was nearby, they assumed she was dead. After cleaning her up a bit, they placed her in a car trunk and buried her in Central Park. Under questioning by the U.S. attorney, none of them admitted to having CPR training or medical qualifications. Their fate was sealed when a medical examiner found soil in her lungs matching that of the burial site, indicating she was buried alive. Some jury members visibly reacted to this revelation. At the trial's conclusion, Jake, his two accomplices, and everyone involved in the weekend were found guilty on all charges. The judge opted against the pass-away penalty, sentencing Jake to life in prison, along with Lenny and Harvey. Others received slightly lighter prison terms. Civil lawsuits against Ryder and Henderson followed the criminal trial. The company lost most of its customers and went into receivership. Henderson, after paying a substantial sum, filed for bankruptcy. The fallout from Henderson's scheme to betray me was far-reaching. Katie was dead, and he and his cohorts were bankrupt and imprisoned. The company vanished, leaving hundreds unemployed. As for me, life moved forward. I sold the house and bought a 2-bedroom apartment. Closing the door on the house for the last time was bittersweet. However, I had my whole life ahead of me. My advisor suggested taking some time off, maybe a cruise to meet someone new. So I booked a round-the-world cruise and headed to the airport, excited for the adventures that lay ahead. Sitting at my desk, I reminisced about the 30 years since our wedding, recalling our honeymoon and the fondest memories of my life. Reflecting on our cherished time in Hawaii with Maggie fills me with deep nostalgia and gratitude. It was an extraordinary, magical experience that will always hold a special place in my heart. From the start, it felt like we had stepped into an enchanted realm, washing away all worldly concerns and leaving a serene tranquility. Walking hand in hand along Waikiki's pristine beaches with gentle waves kissing our feet, we were captivated by the beauty around us. The fragrant scent of plumeria lingered in the air, a constant reminder of the romance and peace that surrounded us. Our honeymoon wasn't just about the breathtaking landscapes, it was the shared experiences that etched themselves into our souls. Exploring lush rainforests and discovering hidden waterfalls revealed the majesty of nature. Standing together, we marveled at the raw power and beauty around us. Our clifftop villa in Maui offered endless panoramic views. Every sunset was a masterpiece, painting the sky in vibrant hues. In those precious moments, as we held each other close, our hearts overflowed with love and devotion. The nights were filled with romance, starting with candlelit dinners on the beach under a canopy of stars, savoring fresh seafood and island delicacies. But it was Maggie's tender gaze that truly made those evenings magical. Hawaii wasn't just a destination. It became the embodiment of our love story, filled with cherished memories and shared dreams. Thinking back on our honeymoon, I relived the beauty and depth of our connection. Hawaii fueled our love, strengthening our bond and bringing us unparalleled joy and peace. I'm sincerely grateful for the precious memories we created in that romantic oasis. Lost in thought, my secretary interrupted, noticing my good mood. She jokingly asked if I'd won the lottery. I explained that my wife had been especially attentive lately, making me feel appreciated and loved after years. It felt like a second honeymoon, and for the first time in years, I couldn't wait to be with her and couldn't stop thinking about her. For the past 2 weeks, I've called Maggie several times a day just to hear her voice, feeling like a lovesick teenager. But I didn't mind. I was happy again, and I didn't want it to end. Maggie and I share a sturdy marriage, yet over 30 years, the spark can dwindle into routine. However, these past 2 weeks have been different. Maggie's been playful, eager for closeness almost every night, and reviving past gestures. I never doubted this surge in affection as anything but a rejuvenation of our bond. Excitedly, I left work early, planning a romantic surprise for her. I bought 24 roses, penned a heartfelt note, picked up her favorite wine and a box of chocolate-covered cherries. Tonight, along with professing my love, I'll unveil the 7-night cruise I booked in celebration of our love. With a grin, I returned home through the garage, brimming with anticipation. Climbing the kitchen steps, instead of finding my beloved wife Maggie, I discovered our daughter Brandy, 29, at the table. Greeting her with a kiss on the forehead, I asked, "Hey there, where's Mom?" Just 2 weeks ago, they had a significant conversation.
"Brandy, I'm not sure about this," Maggie confessed. "I love your dad very much, and I'm afraid that if I go through this, I'll hurt him." "Mom, Dad loves you and he will understand," Brandy reassured. "You yourself said that you need something more than what you received before, and Dad is not getting any younger. I know that he will understand your needs and allow you to have this one-time pleasure." "Brandy, there's no way I can stand in front of your father and tell him I'm on a date with another man. I just can't do it," Maggie insisted. "Then let me do it," Brandy offered. "Alexander will be waiting for you at the restaurant at 7 in the evening, and you will be ready to leave by 6 in the evening when Dad gets home. I'll be here and explain everything to him, and you'll get the experience you crave." "Honey." "Yes, I agreed to this date, but I have doubts. This is wrong and I shouldn't go. How will I be able to look your father in the eye for the next 2 weeks knowing that I agreed to go on a date with another man?" Maggie expressed her concerns. "Well, I can suggest that you don't tell him anything, but during these 2 weeks, show him how much you love him. Let him know that he has nothing to worry about. And when I explain everything, he will understand that what you are doing is not about love, but only about new friendships and a little fun lovemaking. Reach out to him and rock his world. And when I explain the situation that evening, he will welcome you back with open arms. Believe me, Dad loves you and is ready to do anything for you. He always gave you what you wanted, just like that," Brandy advised. "Showing his love for you, Mom. Probably yes. And maybe you're right. Well, I mean, it's just one date and it doesn't mean I'm leaving your father for another man. Having a fun night out 30 years later shouldn't be a problem. I'm going to show your dad how wonderful he is and how much I love him every night until date night. And then, when I get back to him, I'm going to try to make him the happiest man in the world," Maggie resolved. "Mom, just make him feel loved and appreciated. He is a great guy and will give you this one-of-a-kind experience. Now I have to get home to cook dinner for Mike." "Thanks, baby, and say hi to Mike. When will you two give us grandchildren?" Brandy asked. "Soon. We've already talked and plan to start working on it in a few months," Brandy replied. Before heading home, Maggie sat alone in the art studio Jason had built for her behind their house, in front of his latest project. Lately, she had been having difficulty being creative because the thought of being with another man weighed heavily on her. Guilt blocked her creativity until Maggie remembered Brandy's words, and suddenly her brushes came to life, covering the canvas with vibrant colors and emotional landscapes. Suddenly she felt confident that she was doing the right thing for herself and that her husband would give her this experience. She found herself talking to herself as she sat alone, feeling peace overcome her guilt. "Jason may be angry at first, but I know I can make him understand. I truly love this man, and he was such a wonderful husband and father. I will be the best wife and show him how much I love him." On the initial night of my love-boosting plan, I slipped into his favorite baby doll nightgown post-shower, fixed my hair, and spent time on my makeup. Meeting Jason at the door in the nightgown and heels, I whisked him to the bedroom, undressing him and surprising him with a long-forgotten pleasure below the belt, eagerly. His smile filled me with warmth, and I pondered why I hadn't done this sooner. His embrace and words of love sealed the moment. "Maggie, that was the best homecoming in ages. What prompted it?" Jason inquired. "I just wanted to show you how special you are and how much I love you." "Did you enjoy it?" I asked. "I did. It's been too long. I forgot how much I missed it. I felt content," he replied, pulling me onto the bed for passionate kisses. It was the best closeness we'd had in years, leading me to reconsider my date plans with Alexander. Over the ensuing weeks, our closeness soared, and Jason transformed. He was more joyful, affectionate, and engaging, reigniting our bond. I found myself happier than I'd been in ages and reconsidered my date night plans, even confiding in Brandy about the change. Maybe I didn't need that experience anymore as Dad and I found our spark again. This is wonderful, Mom, but hold off on canceling just yet. Let's see how the next 2 weeks unfold. Enjoy each other and reevaluate later. You can always cancel last minute and Alexander will understand. But remember, this opportunity might not come again, Brandy advised. Okay, maybe you're right. Tell me more about Alexander. I recall he's your friend's father, but refresh my memory about his situation, I requested. Sure, Mom. When his wife Mary was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor, Alexander dedicated himself to her until her passing. He became a recluse afterward, battling depression and loneliness. He struggled with the idea of dating again, feeling lost without Mary, Brandy explained. As I listened to his story, I realized I might have a solution for both of you, Brandy continued. I told him about your enduring love for Dad and your desire to rejuvenate your relationship. We discussed the idea of a date not for a long-term romance, but to explore friendship and perhaps more, without abandoning Dad. When he laid eyes on your photo, his face lit up. He grinned and questioned, "Do I really have a chance to take her out?" "Here's our chat, Mr. Connor. I promise, once I show Mom your picture and tell her about you, she won't pass up this opportunity. But she's a bit older than you. Will that be an issue?" "Not at all. As long as she looks the same. I'd love to spend time with her." "What about your dad? Will he be okay with her dating me? After all, she's his wife." "Like I said, leave it to me. Dad will do anything to make Mom happy, and she needs it just as much as you do. I think you two can support each other and become good friends. Trust me, I'll handle everything. I'll talk to her, and if she's on board, I'll give you her number. Then you can plan a date and spend the night together." "Nights? What do you mean?" "Mr. Connor, you're both adults. You both crave companionship. Get creative and plan an evening and night together. So he finds you attractive and wants to spend the night with you. If you're interested, I'll give him your cell number and tell him to call you during the day. He seems really nice, and he's about 10 years younger than you. I know you'll be happy. He just needs someone to talk to and be friends with. And I believe you two can help each other." The following day, Alexander phoned Maggie, and after a delightful chat, he asked her to be his companion and spend the night with him. His compliments about her photo and the prospect of a date made her feel giddy like a schoolgirl. The thrill of something new and his playful banter gave her butterflies. She accepted the date eagerly, expressing her anticipation. While he offered to pick her up, she preferred to meet at the restaurant. They exchanged texts daily, their flirtation escalating as their date night drew near. On the eve of their rendezvous, Maggie's texts would have failed any fidelity test. She was consumed with excitement, envisioning the evening ahead. Despite her thoughts of Jason, she poured more energy into their lovemaking every night.
Jason sported a perpetual grin, while Maggie harbored an insatiable craving for closeness, reaching a level of fulfillment exceeding her wildest dreams. I cherished my daughter, viewing her as the epitome of beauty. Proud of her evolution into the woman she is today, I lamented not spending more time with her during her formative years. Nevertheless, I toiled to provide them with a good life and endeavored to be there for her as much as possible. Upon spotting her, I greeted her with a smile tinged with embarrassment. "Darling, what brings you here? And where's your mother?" I inquired, placing 24 roses, a bottle of wine, and a box of chocolates on the table. "I have a special surprise for your mom tonight, and I can't wait to see her reaction." Reaching into my jacket pocket, I retrieved travel plans and tickets for a week-long cruise. "I'm whisking your mom away on a 7-day cruise aboard the new yacht, love. I'm eager to witness her joy when she learns about it. Don't breathe a word when she arrives. I want it to be a surprise." "Dad." Her use of daddy always tugged at my heartstrings, evoking memories of her as a little girl nestled on my lap. But I sensed something amiss as tears welled in her eyes, and she struggled to catch her breath, clearly anxious about what I was about to hear. "Dad, we need to talk," she said, a tear slipping from her eye. Witnessing the concern on my face, I inquired, "What's wrong? Is something the matter with Mom?" "No, Mom's okay. Please, just sit down and I'll explain everything," she urged. I settled in, meeting her tearful gaze as she struggled to continue. After a pause, she began, "Dad, you know how much Mom loves you, and she's mentioned how great things have been between you two lately." "Yes, and I love her too. That's why I want to express my feelings for her now." Seeing her tears, I sensed that her words weren't unfolding as planned. "I'm really sorry, Daddy, but Mom has a date." I sat in silence, comprehending the words, but grappling with their significance. Her tears flowed as my mind connected the dots, stirring anger within me. "Brandy, what do you mean?" "Where's your mother?" I demanded, my voice booming, causing her to recoil in fear. "Mom loves you deeply, Daddy. And you might take this the wrong way, but she went on a date with someone else and won't be home until tomorrow. She couldn't bring herself to tell you, so I volunteered because she didn't want to hurt you. It's just one night and she'll be back tomorrow." "What's this, a joke? You can't be serious." "Your mother would never betray me like this. We were so loving and close." "I can't believe it," I exclaimed. "Dad, she loves you. She just needed to try something new. After 30 years of marriage, she felt restless and wanted more in life, just once. Nothing will change between you except that she'll love you even more for understanding," my daughter reasoned. Studying her closely, I asked, "Brandy, why are you involved in this? Your mother shouldn't have brought you into it, and I should be discussing this with her, not you. How did she rope you into this?" "Dad, you know Mom and I have always been close. We share everything. She confided that things had slowed down between you two in the bedroom and she felt neglected. My friend's father lost his wife years ago. He was depressed and needed companionship, so I introduced them," she explained. I abruptly stood, knocking over a chair. "What, are you serious? You set your mother up on a date with your friend's father?" I demanded, pacing the kitchen in disbelief. "Damn it, Brandy! Answer me!" I yelled, towering over her. "Did you arrange this? Your mother is on a date with your friend's father because of you?" Anger surged through me, spittle flying from my mouth. "I'm really sorry, Daddy, but yes, it sounds bad when you put it that way. But I did it out of love for my friend's parents," she explained. "Holy hell, what have you done? Love for your friend's parents? What about your love for me? Am I just some piece of trash you can disrespect and expect me to accept whatever you come up with? Where is she now? And what did you mean when you said she won't be home until tomorrow?" I demanded. "Dad, he took her to a restaurant. I don't know which one. And then they'll spend the night together, but it's only this once. She'll be back tomorrow. And Daddy, she loves only you. All she's been telling me for the past 2 weeks is how much she loves you and doesn't want you to be hurt. It's just one date and one night. She knew you would understand and give her this one chance." "Is that all? So foolishly, I've believed her recent affection was fueled by love. But now you're telling me it was just to assuage her guilt. Well, this won't end well, I assure you," I retorted, still in disbelief. Tears streaming down her face, she pleaded, "Dad, it's not like that at all. She never pretended or hurt you. On the contrary, she did everything possible to show you her love." "Daddy, can't you just give her this one night? You know she loves you and can't imagine life without you. She told me she looks forward to your retirement and spending time with your grandchildren. Mike and I plan to have kids, and we need both of you." "Well, isn't that incredibly unusual? That ship sailed the moment she agreed to go on a date with someone other than me." "Who is this guy?" I asked. "He's my friend Mary's dad. He's really nice, and I think you'll like him." "Daddy, I believe you two have a lot in common," she replied. "Oh, really? We could be great pals. So you think I could befriend a man who knowingly dates a married woman? My wife. Maybe we can become drinking buddies, and I can offer him your mom on the weekends. Is that what you and your mom have in mind for me?" I retorted sarcastically. Brandy sank into her chair, realizing a serious flaw in her plan. She had never seen me so angry, or heard me speak to her like that. A shiver ran down her spine as she recoiled from my anger. After pacing around the room, I finally regained control of my emotions and turned to my daughter. Speaking with a venomous tone she didn't want to hear anymore. My hurt and pain were evident, making her feel small and guilty for her role in the situation. "Listen carefully, Brandy. I want you to leave now. I need to be alone to process what you two did to me tonight. I don't want to see or hear from you. Don't call me, don't write, ever. Your betrayal is unforgivable. And now I have no daughter. You are dead to me. Do you understand what this means? I'm no longer your father, and I don't have a daughter. Now get out of my house and never speak to me again," I declared sternly. Brandy sobbed openly, her head in her hands. "Dad, please don't say that. I love you, and I want to stay here tonight. Mom and I planned for me to stay with you. We don't want you to be alone." The level of disrespect you've shown me makes me question if you ever respected or loved me as your father. You're your mother's daughter. All these years, I worked tirelessly to provide you and your mother with a better life, and this is the gratitude I get. No, it turns out I'm only here as a meal ticket, and I've obviously never earned any respect from either of you," I concluded bitterly. Between tears and sobs, she uttered, "Dad, I love you. Please, refrain from saying that. Leave it to your mom to explain everything tomorrow. You've had 30 wonderful years together, and I know you love her. Give her just one thing, and she won't leave you. Daddy, she loves you. She may have her one thing, 2 things, or 1,000 things, but she will never have me again. Forgiveness is beyond my capabilities. Everyone involved will be punished, including the lonely man who took my wife. A married woman. Now go away. You showed your true colors. You still have your mother. Nothing will change for you. You two are made for each other. Like I said, Brandy, in my heart, you are no longer my daughter. Now please leave me." With tears streaming down her face in agony, she literally ran out of the house, experiencing a pain she had never felt before. She never anticipated her father's reaction would be like this. Had he truly forsaken her? For the first time, she realized she might have overstepped a boundary by aiding her mom with this idea. Knowing he loved them both, she could see his anger clearly. No, he was furious, and she prayed he would forgive them. Immediately after Brandy departed, I dialed Maggie's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I left several messages pleading for her to call me and come home. After a few drinks and no response, I sent numerous text messages with the same plea. Still, there was no reply. By 2 o'clock in the morning, it dawned on me that she wouldn't return or answer my calls. Exhausted from self-pity, I simply stared at the TV, which was broadcasting more bad news. In an instant, my world transformed into a nightmare. I reflected on our 3 decades of marriage, recalling the fond memories, the birth of our daughter, the joyous celebrations, Brandy's wedding, and the close bond we shared. All now seemed lost forever. Before her infidelity, Maggie and I maintained closeness 2 to 3 times a week, albeit routine and less thrilling than in our youth. Yet there were no grievances. Post-coitus, we always embraced and drifted off to sleep in each other's arms. "I love you" was a daily exchange, and disagreements were rare. Gazing out the window, my eyes settled on the art studio I constructed for Maggie to nurture her passion. For 2 decades, she devoted herself to crafting remarkable paintings and sculptures, earning accolades displayed in the studio-turned-gallery I crafted to showcase her achievements. It became her sanctuary, a testament to her artistic prowess. While I adored her, I often felt relegated to a distant third in her priorities, behind our daughter and her art. Regardless, her happiness was paramount to me. Brandy's revelation rattled me to the core. The disclosure of her desire to seek closeness elsewhere blindsided me, a betrayal delivered through our daughter that stoked my fury and humiliation. Amidst my turmoil, I contemplated my life, my home, and the uncertain future ahead. My ancestral home, passed down from my grandfather, stood free of mortgage and stirred thoughts of vengeance in my inebriated mind. Fueled by anger and hurt, I pondered ways to inflict reciprocal pain upon Maggie. As I continued to peer out at her sanctuary, a surge of resolve coursed through me. With newfound vigor, I leapt from the couch, replacing sorrow with action. Over a dozen trips to our bedroom ensued, as I gathered Maggie's belongings and relocated them to her studio. Expensive shoes, dresses, clothes, jewelry, all now strewn across the floor of her artistic refuge. For the next hour, I scoured the house for photo albums, including our wedding mementos, stacking them atop the burgeoning pile. Then it struck me. She had vacuum-sealed belongings in the attic. Among them lay her wedding gown, infant garments, and numerous sentimental items, all of which I hauled down into the growing heap, now towering over a meter high. It's astonishing how much one person accumulates over the years. Removing all her framed photographs from the walls, I added them to the stack. Sculptures, sketches, and every cherished possession she held dear were amalgamated into this mounting pile of belongings. As the clock struck 5 in the morning, I remained on edge. Resolving to refrain from action until 6 a.m., I afforded her an opportunity to return home or respond to my calls and messages. Should I receive no reply or find her absent, I vowed to complete what I had started. Rechecking the house, I ensured every item of hers was now housed in the studio. At 5:30, I retrieved a 20-liter canister of gasoline from the garage and made my way to the studio. Preparing for 6 a.m. in the interim, I conducted online transactions, canceling joint credit cards, transferring funds to separate accounts, withdrawing cash from the safe, and packing a few suitcases. These I loaded into my truck, anticipating my temporary departure until legal matters were resolved. Waiting another 5 minutes for her potential return, by 6:05 my last glimmer of hope extinguished. I doused the pile and studio walls with gasoline. With a heavy sigh and brief hesitation, I made my fateful decision, igniting the heap with a lit match. The flames rapidly consumed her treasures, their glow already visible from the street before I could depart. The flames swiftly engulfed her world, and everything dear to her. Driving down the highway, a sudden realization hit me, accentuated by my dire state. A profound sorrow washed over me, tears streaming down my face. In that moment, it dawned on me that my once blissful marriage had met the same fate as the studio. It had burned to the ground. What caught me off guard was the fires spread from the studio to the back porch, igniting both structures. Fortunately, firefighters managed to douse the blaze in the studio and contain the flames on the porch, salvaging the house. However, the residence suffered extensive smoke damage and was rendered uninhabitable until repairs were completed. Amidst the chaos, I checked into a highway motel roughly 90 miles away from the smoldering remains of my marriage, paying with cash. I was determined not to be found until I could gather my thoughts, opting for cash to avoid leaving a trail if the authorities pursued me. Fueled by adrenaline, I remained wide awake until I entered my room. Switching off my phone, I collapsed onto the bed, slipping into a deep slumber and only awakening at noon. As soon as I powered on my phone, it lit up with notifications. I found dozens of missed calls and texts from Brandy, Maggie, and the sheriff.
Upon exiting the Uber, I rendezvoused with Alexander at the restaurant, a mix of nervousness and excitement coursing through me as I beheld the sight of this attractive young man awaiting me at the reception desk. A smile graced his lips as he noticed my admiration of my little black dress, complemented by black sheer tights and matching high heels. His gaze lingered on my revealed cleavage, accentuated by the black bra peeking through. Earlier in the day, I had spent hours at the salon ensuring my hair and makeup were flawless, determined to make this one-time encounter thrilling, unforgettable, and flawless for him. My companion seemed pleased with the sight before him, his growing manhood subtly adjusting to his reaction. Bolstered by his apparent approval, my confidence soared as I greeted him with a tender kiss. As we exchanged greetings, we migrated to the bar, settling onto bar stools, where I caught him stealing glances at my nylon-clad legs down to my underwear as I rose. Our mutual smiles persisted as he placed our drink order. Deciding to silence my phone to avoid any distractions, I resolved to savor every moment of this unique evening, recognizing its fleeting nature. There was a palpable chemistry between us, and our rapport felt akin to that of old friends. I found myself lightly touching his arm and engaging in flirtatious banter, behaviors I rarely indulged in, even with Jason. But tonight, I was determined to embrace my inner confidence and relish in the experience. As we polished off our second glass, the gracious hostess announced our table was ready and ushered us to our seats. Dinner was delightful, and I relished our conversation and shared time. When he inquired if I still desired to spend the night with him, I slipped off my heels and teasingly slid my foot between his legs. His gaze lingered on my red toenails, peeking through the sheer nylon, eliciting a smile as he declared it was time to depart. Hand in hand, he guided me to his pre-arranged hotel room. As the elevator ascended to the 14th floor, the gravity of the situation struck me, and fleeting thoughts of Jason flooded my mind. Sensing my apprehension, he drew me close to his sturdy frame. Meeting his gaze, I was met with a passionate kiss unlike any I had experienced before. That moment was all it took to cast aside thoughts of my husband and marriage. Tonight, I was his, fully embracing the experience. Once inside the room, he wasted no time in unzipping my dress, allowing it to cascade to the floor before disrobing himself. Spinning me around, he praised my allure, then deftly removed my bra and guided me to the bed. The passage of time became a blur as the encounter unfolded, each moment suffused with sensuality and tenderness, leaving me yearning for more. Falling to my knees, I lavished attention on his exquisite form. After several moments, unable to resist any longer, he fervently removed my pantyhose and insisted I don my heels again, Confessing their allure heightened his desire. Amidst our lovemaking, he peppered me with passionate kisses, displaying an expertise that left me awestruck. Fleetingly, I entertained thoughts of introducing similar passion to Jason, but quickly pushed such comparisons aside. His unwavering gaze met mine as he uttered the unexpected words, "I love you, Maggie," a declaration that stirred my soul. It felt akin to a divine revelation, evoking tears of pure joy. We engaged in lovemaking 4 more times throughout the night and once more in the morning, each encounter as passionate as the last. It stood out as the most incredible carnal experience of my life, and I commended myself for allowing it with Alexander. Thoughts of Jason started to intrude, but I endeavored to focus on the man embracing me tightly. Bathed in the morning sunlight filtering through the curtains, we shared tender kisses, his fingers gently caressing my hair. "Maggie, as I mentioned last night, I was sincere. You're an extraordinary woman, so alluring and sensual, and I believe I'm falling in love with you. Can we see each other again?" Suddenly, apprehension gripped me, and I sought to be delicate. "Alexander, it was an extraordinary experience, and you're a kind, wonderful man. However, I'm happily married, and I can't repeat it. It was a one-time event. I cherished it, and you were amazing. You're a fantastic lover, and every moment was enjoyable. Maggie, please think it over before you decline. Your husband doesn't appear to object, and if you allow this to continue, I can bring you great happiness. Just consider it before saying no. Please." "All right, yes, I'll consider it." With another deep kiss, he held me close, and I surrendered to his embrace. If I weren't married to Jason, I'd be with Alexander in an instant. Yet Jason is my husband, and I hoped he could forgive me for my actions. Following breakfast, we departed the hotel, and as he drove me home, I switched on my phone for the first time since our date the previous night, stunned by the multitude of missed calls and texts. Seeing Jason's message, a pang of guilt pierced my heart. This dear man was in anguish, and I was absent. Tears welled in my eyes, realizing I had caused his suffering. Before I could proceed to the next text, the phone rang as Alexander pulled into my neighborhood. "Mom, where are you?" "Hey, sweetie, I'm almost back home." "Mom, there was a fire at the house. We tried calling you all night, but it seems you turned off your phone." "Fire? Where's your dad?" "That's the thing, Mom. He's missing. Nobody knows where he is, and he's not picking up calls either. I have a bad feeling. Mom, I'm almost there. I'll call you back." As Alexander turned onto my street, I spotted a fire truck and police vehicles outside our house. Noticing no visible damage at the front, I inquired with the firefighters about the situation. "Are you the homeowner?" one of them asked, as curious neighbors eyed me standing beside an unfamiliar handsome man, my companion. "Yes, I'm Maggie Spencer." "Well, Mrs. Spencer, we managed to salvage the house. Only the rear porch suffered damage. However, you won't be able to stay here until professionals clean up the smoke residue inside. The cottage at the back, unfortunately, couldn't be saved." My legs gave way, and Alexander supported me, guiding me to sit on the curb. "Is she destroyed?" "I'm sorry, Mrs. Spencer, but all that remains are charred remains. We'll investigate the cause of the fire, but for now, the police detective has a few inquiries for you." I hurriedly rose and headed towards the back of the house before Sergeant Wilson could interrogate me. He caught up as I stood before the remnants of my cherished sanctuary. Instantly, I suspected Jason's hand in this, a retaliatory act for my indiscretions. "Mrs. Spencer, do you have any idea what happened here?" inquired Sergeant Wilson. "No, I wasn't here last night, and I'm clueless about what transpired," I replied. "Are you her husband?" He redirected his question to Alexander. "No, just a friend," he answered. A blush crept up my face as the sergeant cast a knowing glance and inquired about my husband's whereabouts. "I told you, I don't know." When pressed about my own location last night, I timidly admitted to being with Alexander at the Hilton Hotel downtown. The scrutinizing looks from the sergeant and his assistant underscored the gravity of my situation. I had just confessed to not spending the night with my husband, who had also vanished. Now, the detective had more questions. "Mrs. Spencer, are you and your husband separated? Do you know where he was last night?" No, we're happily married, I insisted, only to realize the absurdity after disclosing my nocturnal escapade. Do you have any idea of his whereabouts? No, he's not answering calls. We'll need to speak with him, so when you do, please provide him with my contact information, he instructed, handing me his card. Anger and fear surged within me. Anger at the loss of my sanctuary and years of labor, everything gone in an instant. Fear at the thought of Jason's potential rage and its implications for our marriage. I needed to reach him urgently. I dialed Brandy's number. Brandy, have you heard from your dad? No, I haven't spoken to him since yesterday evening. Why didn't you stay with him as planned? Mom, he kicked me out and disowned me, she revealed. Those words sent a shiver down my spine. Jason would never utter such words, and if he did, it would be far worse than I could fathom. Upon entering the house, I was met with smoke-damaged walls and a foul odor pervading our once cozy home. It was clear we couldn't stay here in such conditions. I surveyed the house and decided to gather clothes and personal items for a few days. In the bedroom, I found everything missing and panicked. My clothes, shoes, and belongings were gone. My heart sank as I searched for my wedding rings on the nightstand. None were there. Why had I left them? What was I thinking? If Jason saw them missing, he must have assumed the worst about our marriage. How foolish and selfish of me. In a panic, I scoured every room, realizing all my possessions were gone. A dreadful realization struck me. Had he truly destroyed everything? Was there nothing left? I rushed out of the house and returned to the studio, examining the remnants closely. Amidst the debris, I spotted photo frames and partially damaged clothing. It was evident Jason hadn't taken my day out as expected, but had obliterated everything dear to me, severing me from his life in one swift blow. I called Brandy in tears and recounted what had occurred, expressing my need for a place to stay. Alexander promptly offered his place, but he was the last person I wanted to see. I insisted on being alone and asked him to leave, hurting him with my abruptness. In that moment, anger swelled within me, directed both at myself and the man I had spent the night with. I recognized my wrongdoing, but unfairly placed blame on him for my selfish betrayal, when it was clearly my fault. Brandy, I've lost your dad, I sobbed. Mom, please don't say that, she pleaded. Dad loves you, Mom, she reassured. He burned everything, my clothes, paintings, my studio, all gone. He left me with nothing, not even a place to stay. He won't answer my calls. I hurt him the most, and I don't blame him. What I did is unforgivable. I should have talked to him instead of going on that date. We could have worked things out, but my selfishness drove him away. If I were in his shoes, I'd never take me back. What should I do now? I have nowhere to go, no clothes. Mom, don't blame yourself. It's partly my fault. You can stay with us until your house is fixed today. We'll buy new clothes and get you settled tonight, Brandy offered. Brandy, all my paintings and sculptures are gone. 30 years of marriage and 20 years of my work destroyed. And I'm left alone, I lamented, attracting the attention of neighbors passing by. Oh my God, your dad's calling. I'll call you back. Struggling to answer the call, I nearly collapsed, but just managed to connect. Jason, is that you? I asked breathlessly. Hi, Maggie, how are you? Jason, where are you? Please come home, I pleaded. No, Maggie. I know everything from your daughter. Yes, your daughter, not mine. You're both dead to me. And this may be the last time we talk. Jason, no, please don't say that. I love you. You need to know this, I begged. Jason, the studio is gone. Did you do this? He demanded. Maggie, you did it. Not me. Maybe not physically, but you incinerated it with your betrayal. When I saw your wedding rings discarded and you gave yourself to another, you died in my heart. Your actions are unforgivable. And Brandy's involvement is shameful and incomprehensible. We're finished. I'll see my lawyers on Monday to start the process. Please, Jason, can't we talk and work things out? You can't just discard our 30 wonderful years like this, I implored. Maggie, we're talking. And I'm not the one discarding our 30 wonderful years. You planned to betray me, gave me 2 weeks of amazing love to ease your guilt, then cheated with your daughter's help. No one could accept or forgive such treachery. It was pure evil. I hope you regret it for the rest of your pathetic life. This is our last conversation. Contact my attorney for anything further. Goodbye, Maggie. Jason, hold on. Jason. Jason had vanished, taking with him the world I cherished and loved. Brandy arrived just as I was desperately calling Jason, who had already ended the call. We embraced, tears streaming down our faces as we mourned our loss. Eventually, we realized we couldn't stay amidst the wreckage of what was once our home. While authorities investigated the fire, we needed to regroup, so we headed to Brandy's house. Upon arrival, Brandy recounted the entire ordeal to Mike, who was taken aback by her explanation. Brandy attempted to explain everything, but when Mike discovered that his wife had arranged a date for her mother with a friend's father, he was appalled and furious. His anger flared. Brandy, you set up a date for your mother with another man. And worse, you knew your father would be alone. You should have known he wouldn't stand for it. What kind of man would allow his wife to go out with someone else? Is this what you envision for our future? Will you willingly betray me like your mother did to your father? He was a good man. You and your mom were his whole world. What have you done, Brandy? Let me tell you. You've shattered a good man and pushed him to extremes. I can't express how disappointed I am in you. I'll reach out to him and apologize for your thoughtlessness, but we also need to talk about us. Having children with you is on hold until I figure out where your values lie. I'll be blunt. I don't share them, and I won't tolerate such betrayal. She was taken aback by his anger and dismayed by his lack of understanding of her mother's predicament. It was just one date after 30 years of marriage, for heaven's sake. So what? Later, she realized the real issue was the collapse of her parents' marriage, her father's departure, and her mother's shattered happiness. Soon, they would all face the consequences of her actions.
5 days later, I returned home to assess the damage. Opting against an insurance claim to avoid additional costs, I informed the lawyer that the house was solely mine, not part of the settlement. Maggie could receive half our savings and no child support. If she resisted, I'd file for infidelity, exposing her affair with our daughter's friend's father. Divorce papers were filed, and I inquired about a criminal arson lawyer, but realized criminal prosecution was unlikely without an insurance claim. In the worst case, fines might be issued, but no charges would proceed unless a false report was filed. A neighbor, acquainted with Brandy from school, called her when she saw me return. Brandy rushed over as I inspected the damage. Hearing her enter, I focused on the task, glancing at the ashes that once housed Maggie's studio. Brandy found me in a bedroom, embracing me tightly. "Daddy, I'm so sorry. Please forgive us. We love you." "Brandy, I can't forgive either of you. I told you not to speak to me again. Now leave me be." "No, you're my father, and you have to forgive me. I'm your daughter, and you love me. Listen, I have no daughter anymore. Just a woman who broke my heart. Leave me alone. Dad, Mom needs you. She's with us, misses you terribly, and wants to apologize. Will you come over?" "Never. Our marriage ended the moment she went on that date and left her wedding rings. It's over, and I won't speak to her. You can both contact me through my lawyer. I'll get a new phone and number. But for now, leave and be with your mother." "Are you really ending 30 years of marriage?" "No, your mother did that when she took off her rings and went to her lover. You both destroyed my happiness, and I won't forget or forgive. Get out." Brandy left in tears, devastated by her father's disownment. His words cut deep, leaving a lasting pain that no therapy could heal. The following day, Maggie received divorce papers and was overwhelmed. Realizing her marriage ended due to her infidelity, she attempted to reconcile, sought counseling, and tried talking to Jason, but he remained silent toward her and Brandy. Mike eventually reached Jason, expressing his dismay at the girl's actions. He reconsidered having children due to doubts about Brandy's loyalty and involvement in the affair. Mike couldn't imagine living with someone with such values and is now in couples counseling to salvage their marriage. Maggie hoped to return to the rebuilt house, but the divorce decree awarded it to Jason. She received half their savings and $3,000 monthly child support for 10 years, which he had no intention of paying. Maggie must find employment to support herself, a responsibility she hadn't faced during their 30-year marriage. She eventually relocated from her daughter's apartment to a small one-room flat near the city center, where she secured employment at a small art gallery as a sales agent to make ends meet. Maggie's artistic freedom faced a sudden threat. No longer could she devote all her time to the splendid studio crafted by Jason, nor could she sit amid her art projects, savoring the serene lake view through the expansive panoramic windows gifted by her husband. Soon, work consumed her schedule, leaving little time to recreate the life she once knew. Gone were the days of leisure, along with her opulent and contented marriage, all for one exhilarating night with another man. There were never enough tears to erase the agony and remorse from that one-time affair. Knowing her beloved husband Jason would never speak to her again, especially after disowning their daughter, shattered her heart. Brandy spiraled into a deep depression following her parents' divorce, seeking solace and salvaging her crumbling marriage through therapy. Months later, the house was restored, and Jason continued to fulfill the court-mandated compensation. Without forewarning, he sold the house. Following the sale, Maggie approached him, seeking reconciliation and forgiveness. When she pressed the doorbell, a young couple welcomed her as they opened the door. "Hello, how can we assist you?" the woman inquired. "Yes, I'm seeking Jason Spencer." "He's here." "Oh, the kind man who sold us this house." "No, he mentioned he was leaving the country for a fresh start. He was incredibly pleasant and helpful. Are you Maggie by any chance?" "Yes, that's me." "He left an envelope and instructed us to give it to you if you ever came by." "Thank you. I'll read it later. Best wishes and enjoy this lovely home." Maggie sat in the car, tears streaming down her face, realizing she'd never encounter Jason again, and lamenting the love she had recklessly discarded. Returning to her solitary apartment, she sat on the bed, her hand trembling as she unfolded the letter. "Maggie, 30 remarkable years. I'll forever cherish the beautiful life we shared. You were my first and only love. I deeply regret not fulfilling my role as your husband. Had I known you needed more, I would have moved mountains for you. But since you've chosen to forge your path alone, that's how our marriage will conclude. Alone. Those 2 wonderful weeks leading up to your betrayal, I actually believed you had rekindled your love for me. They were the happiest weeks of our entire marriage. Learning from Brandy how you used those weeks to divert my attention from your betrayal shattered my soul. I'm certain your daughter has already informed you, but that night I was thrilled to come home and give you a special evening with 24 roses, your favorite chocolates, and wine. I planned to surprise you with a yacht cruise. Love. Discovering that your affection and admiration were insincere, and your true aim was to be with another man, left me utterly humiliated. Congratulations. You've destroyed me and our marriage. Because of this, I can't stay in this city any longer. I've resigned from my job and started a new life in another country. Don't bother looking for me, as I'll be off the grid. I have no desire to speak to you or your daughter anymore. This chapter of my life is closed, and I'm embarking on a new journey without you. It'll take me years to recover from the pain and betrayal you both inflicted. I couldn't bear to stay in our beautiful home without the love of my life and our wonderful daughter. Since you're both dead to me now, I have no reason to remain here. I sincerely hope your special night was worth our marriage and my love. I suspect it was. I'm certain you and your daughter will relish sharing stories. Have a happy life. And please forget about me and our years together, as I already have. My new life has already begun without you." Maggie believed she had no tears left, but after reading his letter, she cried uncontrollably all night, curled up in a ball. The excitement and memories of her encounter with Alexander faded into regret and sadness. Now 52 and alone, she foresaw a bleak future without Jason. She traded her luxurious life for one night of selfish thrill. Jason confronted Alexander late at night as he was departing for Ecuador. Pushing into the house, Jason introduced himself as Maggie's husband, accusing Alexander of stealing her. Despite Alexander's attempts to explain, Jason refused to accept any excuses. His pent-up anger and pain were unleashed on the man before him. Their exchange was brief as Jason wielded a crowbar. In less than a minute, Alexander's life changed forever. Before departing for the airport and leaving the country, Jason warned him, "I offer advice, idiot. Sleeping with a married woman is detrimental to your health." By the time Alexander reached the ER and informed the police, Jason was already on his way to a new life in Ecuador, free from his past burdens and family. It took detectives 2 weeks to ascertain Jason's departure and realize they couldn't pursue him until his return, with no extradition from Ecuador for assault charges. Alexander endured agonizing weeks in the hospital and months in physical therapy, adjusting to his new reality with reconstructed knees. The 25 stitches on his face would forever remind him of that fateful night with a married woman. Uncertain of his future, he knew his former life was irretrievably lost. Because of those 2 women who encouraged him to pursue another man's wife, he cut ties with Maggie and Brandy completely. Brandy's husband, Mike, almost ended their marriage over the incident. However, with the help of a psychologist, Brandy came to terms with her actions, vowing to remain faithful to Mike and their future family. Mike waited 2 years before agreeing to have children, ensuring his wife's commitment to fidelity. Honoring his promise and her remorse, Jason ceased all communication with Brandy. Through her actions, she permanently severed ties with her father and his affection. Hearing about Alexander's assault, Maggie and Brandy were devastated, feeling accountable for the attack and amplifying the guilt and anguish they inflicted on Jason and their family's ruin. It served as another stark reminder of the far-reaching consequences of their actions, unbeknownst to them. They both realized that their naive belief, that if only Jason had granted Maggie that one night their blissful life would have endured, was misguided. Their folly shattered any semblance of happiness. The loss of their father and husband inflicted a lasting pain they would carry until their final days. Hindered by depression and advancing age, Maggie never found another partner, leading a desolate, sorrowful existence. Their dreams of a joyful twilight with Jason and their grandchildren became a distant memory, especially since Jason ceased child support as soon as he left the country. Her savings won't last long, and she'll have to continue working to survive. Crying in her sleep became her usual activity. After selling my house and using my savings accumulated over 3 decades, I now possess more than $750,000. Deducting the cost of my new apartment, this substantial sum ensures comfort and tranquility for the next 30 years here in Ecuador. In this country, I've encountered many young, attractive women who appreciate the generosity of an American man, and I relish spending time with them. 6 months following that fateful night, I found myself on the beach in Puerto Lopez, sipping a cold beer in front of my new apartment. It dawned on me that divorce is a natural occurrence, and parting ways is acceptable. Being alone is okay. What's not acceptable is remaining in a situation where one is neither valued nor cherished. This will never be my reality again.
I am a woman in my late 50s. When I was young, I had many dreams and desires, but after getting married and raising children, I found myself settled into family life. I graduated from college and even landed a job at a reputable company, but I can hardly recall using my major or skills after having children. However, the one thing I pride myself on is that, no matter what anyone says, I managed to send my children to prestigious universities. Having kids who attend top universities is a source of pride for me wherever I go. But as they became independent due to college and job searches, I realized I was left with nothing. My husband has been no comfort to me. It feels like we haven't had any real contact for about 10 years. Since our children became independent, we have been sleeping in separate rooms. When my husband comes home from work, we have dinner together and then go our separate ways. He's not the type to help around the house or suggest going out. As a result, in these recent years, with no children to take care of and not much housework to do, I felt utterly lethargic. To make matters worse, menopause hit, and I found no joy in life. At this age, meeting friends isn't as enjoyable as it used to be. One day, while feeling this sense of depression, I went to the supermarket for groceries. On my way back, in the apartment elevator, I saw a notice for the recruitment of a neighborhood head. Until then, I had no interest in what a neighborhood head did, or even knew it existed. But strangely, that day, the notice caught my eye. Eventually, I decided to give it a try, prepared diligently for the application, and went through an interview. There were about 3 candidates, including myself. I expressed a strong desire to serve, which seemed to have made a good impression. As a result, I received the highest score and was selected as the neighborhood head. After that, my life changed. I used to dress casually and go out without makeup, but I started to take care of myself. When there were important community meetings or errands at the community office, I dressed up and, although clumsily, applied makeup. Some might say dressing up isn't important, but what matters to me is that my mindset has completely changed. Throughout this process, I have made many acquaintances. I became close not only with other neighborhood heads, but also with the community center director, and we often gather together. Despite living in the apartment for 15 years, I didn't have many close neighbors. But now I find myself greeting everyone as I pass by, which shows how much brighter I've become. My sons and daughters also visit occasionally on weekends, and they compliment me, saying, "Mom, you seem prettier these days." And did brother feel it too? Right. "Mom, you've become really lively lately." In the past, my children often comforted me when I was feeling depressed and lethargic. Nowadays, they don't hesitate to act childishly or make demands. My son comes home asking, "Mom, can you pack me some food?" And my daughter says, me too, but can you make me some French fries when I come tomorrow?" Before, I found such tasks to be bothersome and tedious, so my children wouldn't even ask. But now that I am enthusiastic and always smiling, they feel comfortable making such requests. Looking back, I realize I was somewhat indifferent as a mother. My husband is indifferent to my changes. When he comes home, he either watches TV in the living room and falls asleep, or he comes home late after drinking with friends and just collapses into bed. These days, if I have a meeting and come home late, leaving dinner prepared seems to be fine with him. If I suggest he orders delivery, he actually seems to prefer it. I too think it's much better than him complaining about why I bother with such things. So I just let it be. Since becoming a neighborhood head, I've been actively participating in local events and fulfilling my role with enthusiasm. It's not because someone asked me to, but because I enjoy being socially active. 3 months after becoming a neighborhood head, I met our community center director. I assumed he would be around my age, but to my surprise, the new director was a man in his late 20s. Seeing him slightly older than my son, I couldn't help but view him as a child at first. However, his energetic and efficient way of handling work sometimes fills me with admiration. The community center director is said to have graduated from a prestigious university and is tall and good-looking, which has earned him praises from the neighborhood heads. He also seems to be keen on exercising, as he has a muscular build that has caught the attention of the neighborhood ladies. I simply thought of him as a fine young man. Then, during a neighborhood heads workshop, I ended up having a personal conversation with him. All the neighborhood heads gathered for a 2-day workshop. During the day, we had productive meetings and fun, and in the evening, we had a barbecue party. Everyone started drinking heavily, saying let's do well in the future. I also drank a bit, but I didn't get drunk easily. I guess I had become strong to alcohol since I often drank a bottle or 2 of soju alone at home. Eventually, all the other neighborhood heads had left, and only the young community center director and I remained. It was a bit tough for just the 2 of us to clean up. After about an hour of struggling with the cleanup, the alcohol had worn off, and I felt a bit hungry, but it seemed odd to eat something or drink more at that time. So I was about to head to my room. That's when the young director, who had helped with the cleanup, asked me, "Would you like to have another drink?" There are some snacks left too. Honestly, I was quite pleased and followed him into the room he was using. A few drinks in, I got to know more about the director. He talked smoothly about which university he had attended, why he became a community center director, and what his upbringing was like. During the conversation, I learned that his mother had passed away when he was young. His father had raised him alone, which must have been challenging during his growth years. The director said, "That became a regret from my childhood. Maybe that's why I felt more drawn to you." I didn't fully understand what he meant, but I comforted him, saying, "If you ever need help in the future, just let me know. You are like my own son to me, and I care about you." Then the community center director, staggering a bit, stood up and hugged me tightly from behind. It seemed he was very lonely, so I just patted his hand. A bit startled, I turned around, and at that moment, he kissed me. Perhaps because I had been sleeping in separate rooms from my husband for 10 years. The touch of a man felt very vivid to me. Although it happened in an instant, it felt natural. Rather, perhaps due to the influence of alcohol, the director and I actively desired each other. Thus, we spent a pleasant time together until almost dawn. After that, I, exhausted, went back to my room and fell asleep. In the morning, when everyone woke up, seeing me unusually low on energy, the other village heads commented, "You must have had a lot to drink yesterday. You better go home and rest. You look tired." Honestly, I hadn't slept much. And since the director was quite a young man, my legs, back, and waist were sore and I felt drained. The director didn't make it obvious but seemed to be avoiding me a bit. Feeling unwell, I went home and slept for a solid 12 hours. It felt like I had a body ache. Every part of my body hurt so much that I spent the whole day just sleeping. After a good sleep, I felt refreshed. When I checked my phone, there were many messages from the director, from missed calls to texts. The last message was, "I have something to tell you. I'll wait for you in front of Cafe until 1 p.m. By the time I saw the clock, it was almost 12 p.m. In a rush, I washed up, got ready, and went to meet the director at the cafe. Since it was a place where locals frequently passed by, we eventually had to buy a cup of coffee and drive to a quiet park in another area to talk. The director said to me, "Can we meet here often in the future? Just to talk and give each other what we want." Initially, I thought the director would apologize or suggest we forget everything that happened. It was such an unexpected proposal that I was momentarily stunned and said, "I'll think about it," and then I returned to our neighborhood. I spent a few days pondering what to do. It seemed like there was nothing bad for me in it. So after some thought, I wrote a note to the director saying, "Let's meet there at that time." Since then, we have been meeting frequently. Being in menopause and almost living like strangers with my husband, meeting such a young man feels wonderful. Indeed, because the director is young, there are days when I physically struggle. The director has remarkable stamina for a young man. I really like the director's proactive attitude. But at the same time, I feel a bit sorry for him. Lately, I've become a bit more daring, trying out things I've never done before. The director often praises me for this, and when he does, I turn into a shy girl. Now, I have about half a year left in my term as a village head. I had planned to do it just once, but now I'm contemplating doing it again, if only to not lose the director. One thing that worries me is that the director, now in his 30s, still doesn't have a girlfriend while we've been spending time together. I wonder if I'm being a hindrance to him starting a family, which is something a young man like him should be thinking about. It's a growing concern, wondering if I'm holding him back. If I were only to think of myself, continuing as we are now would be best. But when I consider the director's future, I know I can't just be selfish. Sometimes he seems to think of me as a girlfriend, and at other times, like a mother. Unless something major happens, I have no desire to end things with the director on my own. But I do worry if I'm just fulfilling my own desires. What's certain is that the director has become the meaning of my life. He brings the greatest satisfaction to both my body and my mind. I've heard that it's common for women, as they age, to have a lover. How could they do that even if the relationship with their husband is bad? I used to think. Now, I've become someone else. Thanks to the director, I've become a brighter and more vibrant person. I've even started exercising to build up my stamina. If someone finds out, my life might come crashing down. But I dare say these are the happiest times of my life. I don't know where this will end.
I never had a fondness for playing cards. During college, some pals attempted to school me in poker, but I could never grasp it. Consequently, I never bothered to learn the hierarchy of hands or the ins and outs of Texas Hold'em or whatever it's called there. It simply didn't pique my interest. Fed up with constantly losing money to my cutthroat buddies, I gave up playing altogether. In contrast, my wife Kathy adored poker and excelled at it. She participated in local tournaments with success, though she mostly played with her regular circle of friends. They convened once or twice monthly at Larry and Sandy's suburban townhouse. Interestingly, Kathy had known them since college, Katie being her longtime friend and Sandy her former roommate. The group comprised Larry, Sandy, Kathy, Paul, Brian, and Terry. Though present myself, Paul's wife Mary, and Brian's wife Allison refrained from playing, opting instead to watch TV in the living room. There used to be another player, Wes, but he got the boot for cheating. While I didn't object to Kathy's involvement, it was her crowd, not mine. Mary and Allison were fine, and we were even growing close. However, the others were, at best, tolerable. Interacting with them voluntarily was beyond my imagination, particularly Mark, who was an outright idiot and whom I frankly detested. Terry and Mark felt isolated. Terry, reserved and modest, didn't seem skilled at poker. Mark, on the other hand, was insufferable. If we crossed paths in public, I'd likely ignore him. His demeanor, loud, offensive, and self-absorbed, led to more than one disagreement between us. I tolerated him solely because he belonged to my wife's poker circle, encountering him only during their games. My main gripe with poker nights was how intensely competitive Katie became. If she lost, it cast a shadow over her mood the following day. Despite my attempts to address this, she dismissed my concerns. Lately, she'd been pushing for weekly poker gatherings, a prospect I wasn't keen on, a sentiment shared by Mary and Allison. Thankfully, this staved off the weekly poker plan, for now. One Saturday night at Larry and Sandy's, tensions ran high, particularly for Katie. As the night wore on, I intermittently checked on her, only to be met with her frustration. Eventually, well past the usual end time, I heard commotion from the dining room where they played. Stepping in, I caught Mark's assertion about a bet, backed by Larry's reminder of the rules. Katie reluctantly agreed, signaling her turn to play. "What's going on?" Mark asked with a smirk and a hostile glare. "Katie lost all her money, leaving me the pleasure of the final hand. She's lost, now it's time to settle up. Apologies," Katie assured. "She wouldn't do this to anyone else but me. Hey, buddy, she made a bet and lost. That's the rule." It was at that moment Katie resolved to take charge of her fate. "Henry, it's fine. I lost. I'll pay," Katie conceded. "No, Katie. You owe me loyalty. Trying to settle for less would be cheating me," Henry protested. Mark's behavior only confirmed my suspicion of his character. "You're witnessing this, so it's not betrayal," he argued. Fed up, I snapped, "Shut up, you fool! This isn't about you." Turning to Katie, I urged, "Let's go. We're leaving." Katie hesitated. "Henry, I hate to do this, but I must. If I don't, I'll be kicked out." My response was firm. "I don't care if you're expelled. I don't care if you never play poker again. I approached Went, calling out, "Hey guys, I need your help." Katie glanced at Paul and Brian, signaling toward me with a tilt of her head. As I moved closer to her, Paul and Brian grabbed me from behind. I struggled, but Larry stepped in, assisting them in restraining me. "Are you serious? You idiots!" I exclaimed. "You're going to hold me down while my wife does this in front of me?" Larry responded calmly. "She made a bet and knew the consequences. She's choosing to stay, so she pays up." He chuckled. "Don't worry, Mark won't be around much longer. He really was an idiot." Mark then advanced, ending up directly in front of Katie, who was kneeling. "Catherine, if you go through with this, it's over," I stated calmly, emphasizing her full name. "Stop being dramatic, Henry," she retorted. As she leaned forward, I let out a loud scream, halting her. "Hold on a moment," I interjected. She paused, meeting my gaze. "I just want to be clear. Is everyone okay with this?" Silence filled the room until Mark stepped forward, dismissing my concerns. "Come on, he's spoiling the mood," he declared. Katie, leaning forward, intervened. "Okay, that's enough. I can't bear to see it anymore. Let me go, and I'll leave." With a burgeoning plan in mind, I realized it wasn't over between Katie and me. I needed to exact revenge on this fool. Katie paused, signaling to the men restraining me. They released their hold, and I calmly approached Katie. Pretending to struggle with my wedding ring, I extended my left hand with fingers spread wide, while my right hand clenched into a fist. Katie knelt determinedly to my left, while Mark grinned menacingly to my right. "I warned you, Katie. If you go through with this, we're done," I reiterated, standing beside them and locking eyes with her. "You went ahead and did it, Catherine, and with such a fool," I muttered. As I uttered this, I struck Mark in the nose with the back of my right fist, prompting him to shield his face with both hands. Swiftly, I pivoted to his right, delivering another blow with my left fist as he cowered, causing him to topple backward. His trousers and underwear pooled around his ankles, leading to a clumsy fall onto his backside and then flat onto the floor, landing between the dining table and a large antique cabinet. Fueled by anger, I acted on impulse. Katie stumbled backward, landing on her rear, while I loomed over Mark, positioned at his feet. To my right stood a spacious dining table, accommodating 8 people comfortably, with 3 chairs on each side. On my left loomed an imposing antique wardrobe, measuring at least 6 feet in length. Its oak base stood approximately 30 inches tall, adorned with numerous drawers and doors, while the top half, another 40 inches higher, boasted mirrored glass doors enclosing various collectibles such as china, Hummel figurines, and snow globes. Grabbing the top of the antique cabinet, I knew toppling it over wasn't feasible, but I hoped to instill fear. The weighty base, filled with contents, likely exceeded 300 pounds, while the top half, supported by a wooden frame, housed delicate items. Unfortunately for Mark, Larry had never properly secured the top half to the base. As I tugged on it, the top half of the cabinet teetered over. Though I hadn't intended to bring it down on Mark, I was oddly satisfied with the outcome. The ensuing crash echoed like an explosion. Fortunately for Mark, the space between the cabinet stand and the table prevented it from landing on him. Instead, the lower portion remained on the stand, while the upper part collided with the dining table. Regrettably for Mark, the contents of the cabinet cascaded forward, smashing through its glass doors. Shards of glass rained down on him, along with the items inside, resulting in numerous cuts. Thankfully, he shielded his bloodied face with his hands, preventing glass from injuring his broken nose or eyes. Unfortunately for Mark, when he hit the floor, his shirt rode up to his stomach due to his jeans and boxers being pulled down to his ankles, leaving his upper abdomen to his shins exposed. The scene unfolded rapidly, leaving everyone in stunned silence. In the midst of it all, I remained in improvisation mode. Pretending to be concerned, I circled the table where his head lay and loudly advised, "Don't touch him, get an ambulance." Upon reaching his head, I crouched so low that only he could hear me and whispered, "I hope you bleed. But if not, find me later and we'll discuss it. Just so you know, there's glass everywhere. I wouldn't move much if I were you." Sandy emerged from the kitchen announcing, "The ambulance is on its way. ETA is 5 minutes. Should we also call the police?" Katie and I responded simultaneously. She declined while I insisted, "Absolutely." Katie wasn't naive. She understood that involving the police meant filing a report and giving statements. Larry was furious. "Dude, you practically eliminated him and wrecked my cabinet. We need to call the cops," he argued. "I didn't try to eliminate him, but I agree we should call the police," I conceded. Personally, I'd welcome talking to them. Isn't this like soliciting lovemaking for money? I challenged. I'll look into it. They'll never buy it, I continued. Larry countered. Who do you think they'll believe? Me or the guy lying here half unclothed, who isn't married to any of the women? I relented. Maybe I'm wrong. Go ahead, call them. Do as you wish. Please, call the police. I'll wait outside for the ambulance, I added. I circled the table and approached Katie, who was now kneeling beside Mark. Squatting down beside her, I removed my wedding ring and tossed it into the shattered glass near Mark's head. You know what, Catherine? I don't think I'll be needing this anymore. If you want, you can fish it out of the glass. Confused, Katie looked at me with teary eyes and asked, Cards next to his head? What are these? Extra cards? Wait, the guy you left your marriage for is a cheater? Are you kidding me? I exclaimed. Mark, you're an idiot. I almost betrayed my husband and you actually cheated? There's a big difference between almost cheating and actually cheating. Deciding to address it later, I noted that Mark couldn't speak due to the shards of glass covering his face, with blood now splattered everywhere. Stay here, Catherine. I'll go outside and meet the ambulance. They should be here any minute. I'll inform you when they arrive. I exited through the front door, hopped into my car, and drove off. 2 blocks down, I encountered an ambulance cruising slowly, scanning house numbers with its spotlight. Passing by, I continued on my way home. Upon arrival, I entered the house and commenced packing, anticipating the imminent arrival of the police. Gathering a small suitcase and a couple of duffel bags, I hastily tossed in essentials. Over the next few days, I completed my packing. Just as I was zipping up my suitcase, I heard Katie enter the front door, calling out, Henry, where are you? Ignoring her, I proceeded to leave the bedroom with my bags. Oh, there you are, she exclaimed upon spotting me. Henry, what are you doing? You don't have to leave, she pleaded. God, you know. Uh-oh, I began, addressing Mark. I know what you did to me, Mark. What about Larry and Brian? Or do you only target married men? And you chose to kneel down instead of settling in cash. By the way, what was the bet? Katie interjected. Henry, stop it. Mark was the only exception, regardless of the stakes. It was a matter of principle. I didn't intend to have lovemaking with him. Plus, you intervened. Did I stop you? You were already getting down to business, she retorted, deflecting the question. I managed to prevent them from involving the police and retrieved your ring from the shattered glass. I've said it before, I don't care. They should call the cops. Heck, I could have eliminated him. Maybe I should confess to the police, I pondered aloud. No, Henry, that's a bad idea, she cautioned. We'll cover the damages ourselves. Screw them. I won't give them a cent. When's your next poker night? I inquired. Not for a couple of weeks. Mark won't be invited back, so don't worry. We'll have time to recover, she assured. Henry, where are you going? She called out as I headed towards the door. By the time she finished speaking, I was already outside. Climbing into my car, I drove off while she stood at the front door shouting after me. Ignoring her, I drove several miles until I found a motel and booked a room for the night. I switched off my phone and spent the night staring at the ceiling. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep around 5 in the morning, awakening at 10. After showering, I paid for my stay until Wednesday at the front desk. Upon turning my phone back on, I found a dozen missed calls from Katie, along with another dozen from Allison and Mary. There were numerous messages from Katie explaining her actions and insisting it meant nothing to us. Despite regretting what happened, she tried to rationalize it, claiming it was merely a bet. I responded with a single text, suggesting she forward all her messages to her mother to gauge her perception of the situation. Then I turned off my phone again. I spent 2 hours on a park bench, followed by an hour wandering around the mall, and another hour on a different park bench. Later, I visited the supermarket and stocked up on junk food before returning to my motel room, spending the remainder of the night indulging in snacks and researching scams online. Exhausted by 10 o'clock, I drifted off to sleep. Monday morning, I attempted to focus on work, but my boss noticed my distraction and inquired about the issue. When I explained my family troubles, he suggested I take a few days off. He advised me to call on Wednesday to confirm if I needed additional time off for the rest of the week. As it was time to leave anyway, I decided to stop by the local bar and grill for a couple of beers and some better food than what I had purchased at the supermarket. Not wanting to engage with anyone, I retreated to the back of the restaurant and settled into a booth, regardless of my preference. Suddenly, 2 figures approached, neither of them the waitress. Hey, Henry, mind if Allison and I join you? One of them asked. I disregarded their presence and took a sip of ice water. Are you mad at us too? What did we do? They inquired. Nothing. You two did absolutely nothing, I replied calmly. Mary and Allison slid into the booth across from me, with Allison speaking next. Henry, if Mary and I didn't do anything, why are you upset with us? I know you're not keen on people playing poker with Katie, but I thought we were friends, she expressed. I thought so too, but you didn't do anything. Seriously, you're both asking me this, I retorted sharply, keeping my voice level. You stood by as your husband restrained me while my wife attended to another man without my consent. And you remained silent. The two of them sat in silence. What kind of friends are you? At one point, I looked around, pleading for someone to intervene, and you two said nothing. I didn't think she'd actually do it, Mary confessed. I thought it was just a dumb joke. I couldn't believe she went through with it, Allison added, expressing her remorse. She feels awful now. She's worried you might show these messages to her mom. You wouldn't, right? Not yet, but I will if necessary. Everyone knows how bad the situation was. We discussed it after you left and the ambulance took Mark away. Larry and Sandy assured they wouldn't involve the police. You'll just have to cover the damages, I explained. Listen, Mary, I'm not paying anyone anything, I declared firmly. Larry and Sandy may have helped Katie with her apparent gambling issue, but that doesn't excuse their involvement. Sandy stood by and watched while Larry actively restrained me while Katie destroyed our marriage just to avoid getting kicked out of the damn poker group. Henry, she's a mess. Please try to forgive her, Mary pleaded. I'm not sure she even wants forgiveness. She doesn't think she did anything wrong. She probably expects an apology from me for stopping her from settling her bet, I retorted. Suddenly, Allison had an idea. What if we level the playing field? What if you find someone who will satisfy you in return? I responded to her slowly and deliberately as if explaining to a child. Consider this. We were in a room, presumably among friends. Then those very friends held me back so she could settle the bet. Now, to level the playing field, I must find a woman to please me. Essentially, I embarrass myself in front of her friends, and she simply hears that I retaliated. The image of her on her knees is seared into my memory. On the flip side, she may not even believe I got even. She could just pretend it didn't happen. But I saw it. There has to be a way to put an end to this. I hate seeing my friends endure nonsense, Mary. You claim not to want to see me hurt. But were you okay with how hurt I was on Saturday? You stood by while all this unfolded. I was suffering, yet you paid no heed. Friends don't do that. We're not friends. In my view, these two were as culpable as anyone else. I've been concocting a plan for a bit of payback. I just need to set it in motion. If someone had spoken up, I'm certain this wouldn't have occurred. You could have said something to your husbands. It might have sparked a confrontation, but it could have saved my marriage. It's time to offer them some hope, but I'm unsure if there's a way to level the playing field, as you suggest. I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea, I just don't see how. What if one of us does it? I glanced at Allison for about 10 seconds. What if it's both of you? Wait, you want us to even the score? Mary asked. I can't do this. Paul will be furious if he finds out. I understand perfectly, I quipped sarcastically. The guy who restrained me while my wife betrayed me. I see everything crystal clear. I'll do it, Allison volunteered, surprising both of us. You're right. We bear some responsibility, she admitted. I can't go along with this, Mary interjected. And it's unfair of you to put me in this position, Henry. If Allison is willing to assist, that should suffice. No, I countered. The bait has been set. Now it's time to reel them in. Neither of you means anything to me. This is part of the negotiation. I don't seek balance. I demand the scales tip in my favor. Mary pondered silently for about 2 minutes. The longer she deliberated, the more confident I grew in handling the situation. If we agree to this, will you forgive Katie? She asked finally. If you refuse, I won't even consider it. You won't tell Paul? She continued. I won't utter a word, I assured her. Technically, it wasn't a lie. I hadn't planned to verbalize it. With a motel room booked until Wednesday morning, I intended to hold out until the weekend before deciding whether to return home or seek a new place. I can't believe this is happening, Mary exclaimed. Welcome to my world, I retorted sarcastically. Look, if it's that awful for you, just let it go, I suggested. That's not the issue, Henry. I care about you and you're a good guy. If I weren't married, I'd be with you in a heartbeat. But I am married. You're pushing me into cheating on my husband, Mary explained. Mary, I'm not forcing you into anything, I clarified. I know. All right. If it helps you move past what my husband did, then I'll do it. Either way, it's his fault. If he wasn't an idiot, I wouldn't be in this situation. As for me, she can justify it however she wants. It's my way of getting back at her damn husband, so I don't care, I thought to myself. Okay, let's meet tomorrow evening in my room at 6 o'clock. I'll bring some food and wine, I proposed. Both women rose from the table and departed, engaged in conversation. They seemed eager for tomorrow night and not at all upset. Am I the only one who takes marriage vows seriously? I know what you're thinking. Here I am, a married guy planning to date 2 married women, all while preaching about the sanctity of marriage, I reflected. But she cheated on me. By doing that, she disrespected and embarrassed me. Our marriage was already null and void. I no longer honored those vows. It was all over except for the paperwork and the women I was about to meet. They and their husbands were partly responsible, so to hell with them. I'll never understand those people whose spouses cheat, yet they insist on upholding the sanctity of marriage. Blah, blah, blah. My motto is, what's good for the goose? I acknowledge that she didn't intend to betray me, but it wasn't hard for her to agree to it when her coveted spot in the poker group was at stake. Yes, I may be unreasonable. Yes, she needs assistance with her gambling issue. However, she may not seek help until she hits rock bottom. Maybe divorce is that rock bottom. The following day, Tuesday, I returned to my hometown, ensuring Katie wasn't present, and entered to gather some new belongings. It was tough walking through my house, seeing remnants of my life everywhere, knowing it would never be the same. Each time sentimentality crept in, I envisioned her kneeling in front of Mark. The anger remained potent, so I opted not to take anything that might remind me of her. I grabbed some electronics, my laptop, iPad, camera, along with basic tools and clothing. I resolved to start apartment hunting after leaving and return later for the remaining items. I didn't need much. Departing the house, I scouted for apartments and found an affordable furnished 1-bedroom unit available for monthly rent. I could move in any time after Saturday. After finalizing the lease, I went for lunch and prepared to meet the girls. At Best Buy, I purchased an Apple SD card reader and a dozen SD cards. I also acquired the cheapest wireless color printer they had. Then I visited a liquor store and picked up a couple of bottles of wine I knew Mary and Allison favored. I returned to the motel room and arranged my belongings to create a cluttered appearance, strategically placing the 35mm camera for an unobstructed view of the bed. Due to the room's disarray, the camera remained inconspicuous. Around 5:30, I ordered appetizers from a nearby restaurant, which arrived just before 6. At 6:15, a gentle knock sounded on the door. Peering through the peephole, I ensured it was the women and not irate husbands. I wasn't particularly fearful of my own husband, but I preferred not to be caught off guard again. I activated the camera to record and welcomed the women inside, offering them wine. Initially hesitant, they eventually accepted, reasoning that a bit of liquid courage wouldn't hurt. Ladies, we don't have to do this. We can simply enjoy wine, food, and each other's company. You both know I would never pressure you into anything you're not comfortable with, I asserted. I understand, Henry, Allison replied. You're such a kind person. It's a shame Brian isn't as considerate as you. Katie truly lucked out. Mary and I have discussed this since we parted ways yesterday. You were correct. Our silence was a failure on our part. By not speaking up, we were taking action. I deeply regret our inaction. I appreciate that. I just want to understand where I went wrong, I replied. What do you mean, what you did wrong, Mary? It's hard to believe Katie made such a sudden decision. If she intended to involve me, she should have done so before I arrived. I simply want to know what I did to make her think this was acceptable. Henry, I truly believe Saturday was the first time something like this happened. It's impossible to keep something like this a secret. The truth always surfaces, Mary explained, unsure how accurate her statement was. All right, let's get started, Allison interjected eagerly. You go to the bed and stand. Following her instructions, I positioned myself as she directed. I'll undress you now. Stay still. No hands. I want to do this myself. Meanwhile, Mary settled into the office chair by the desk, wearing a broad smile. It made me wonder if these two had experience with such encounters. Mary positioned herself perfectly to record everything on video. Allison unbuttoned my shirt, sliding it down my arms, leaving them extended outwards. With a wide grin, she ran her hands over my chest. She then untied my shoes, having me lift each foot for removal, followed by taking off my socks. Proceeding, she unbuckled my belt, unbuttoned my jeans, and pulled them down over my hips. Once my jeans were off, Allison knelt in front of me. Though I wanted to hasten the process, I restrained myself, allowing her to proceed at her pace, which was remarkable. Fortunately, Brian was lucky as it didn't take long. When she finished, she knelt back and looked up at me. Tenderly, I leaned down and kissed her forehead. "That was incredible, Allison." "Absolutely incredible." "Mary, I'll need a moment to recharge the batteries," I quipped. We settled down, indulging in some of the food and wine we had brought along. During our meal, we revisited the events of Saturday night after I left Larry and Sandy's. Allison spoke up first. "You were there when Katie discovered the cards near Mark's shoulder and accused him of cheating." Initially, he struggled to speak as glass rained down on him, fearing it might enter his injured nose or mouth. Mary chimed in next. His reaction when the ambulance arrived was priceless, albeit delayed. It took a bit longer than expected for them to pry his hands away from his face. He looked dreadful, to say the least. "So much for, 'I'll go meet the ambulance,'" Allison remarked, mimicking me with a smirk. I replied, feigning forgetfulness. "Must have slipped my mind." Unfortunately, he managed to pull through. Mary shuddered at the memory. "Then he goes on about not cheating, claiming Katie owes him a bet and how he'll seek retribution. Blah, blah, blah," Allison added. "And the blood. Oh, the blood," she continued. "It was everywhere. The EMTs didn't even attempt to clean him up. They just covered him and whisked him away." Mary took matters into her own hands. "Katie insisted she wouldn't settle their bet unless he could prove he didn't cheat." At this point, I interjected, "So if Mark proves he's innocent, she'll still honor the bet?" A significant pause followed as the girls fell silent. Then Mary resumed. "I don't think there's much cause for concern right now. Are you absolutely certain?" I responded. "As I mentioned, Mark sustained numerous cuts all over his body. Most were minor, but he had a couple of deeper cuts on his abdomen requiring stitches. He remained hospitalized until Monday to have all the glass removed. Larry visited him at the hospital and had a conversation with him," Allison added. "He was livid, threatening to not only collect the bet from Katie, but also to engage in carnal activities with her right in front of you." Mary intervened once more, stating, "I highly doubt Mark will be welcome back given his cheating. However, Larry's also upset with you. He believes you're liable for the damaged curio cabinet and is frustrated that his homeowner's insurance will need to cover the hospital expenses. Additionally, he expects you to reimburse for the broken items in the cabinet." "Mary, relay my message. Inform Larry and Sandy that I'll only settle for $0.10 if instructed by the judge. Legal documents and testimonies will be provided to support this. My statement will depict the situation as if I stumbled upon a full-blown orgy, and when I intervened to stop my wife's involvement, I was unlawfully restrained by Larry, Brian, and Paul. It will include the names of all participants and witnesses present. Copies will be distributed to neighbors, family, friends, colleagues, and even churches attended by anyone involved. If possible, I'll reach out to Oprah and share the story with the world." We sat in silence for about half a minute until Mary exclaimed, "All right, it's my turn, let's do this." "Sure, but I want both of you unclothed too," I insisted. "We don't have to be undressed for this," Allison chuckled. "I know we don't have to, but I feel a bit awkward," I responded. "Forget about it," Mary exclaimed. "We've come this far. What's the difference?" With that, she undressed, and Allison followed suit. I stood at the edge of the bed once more, and this time it was Mary who knelt down without hesitation. I was trying to distract myself from the situation and prolong the process when Allison rose from her chair, pushed me onto the bed, leaving Mary on her knees. I landed on my back as Allison jumped onto the bed. After about 5 minutes, it seemed to be winding down when Mary interjected, "All right, it's my turn now. Allison, move over so I can join." Allison giggled, rolled aside, and Mary took her place. Eventually, Mary rolled off and lay beside me. So I asked, "Have you done this before?" "We had our moments. You know we went to college together, right?" "Well, we had a few experiences," Mary recounted. "That's right, Mary," Allison chuckled. "A few times," Mary corrected, laughing. "More like 100, Mary added before saying, "Okay, it was fun, but I should head out. Henry, I hope this helps tip the scales in your favor. Please call me tomorrow and let me know what you think. I really hope you two can get through this. I don't want to lose you as friends." Allison chimed in, "Henry, we're truly sorry we didn't speak up when everything was happening. Please call me tomorrow so we can talk. And if you need to talk later, you can call me anytime." "Just to be clear, this was probably the only solution," I stated. "Probably?" Mary questioned. "Come on, Mary, that's all we've been discussing since last night. You know we'll do it again. We just need to be more discreet than doing it in front of everyone during a poker game. Agreed?" "Agreed," I chuckled. "We'll talk tomorrow. I'll call you someday." With that, the girls left, and I began working on the video I had made. I edited it down to the risque parts and printed out some compromising still photos of both women. Then I copied the edited video onto the remaining SD cards and prepared 9 identical envelopes, each containing an SD card and several explicit photos of the girls. Although it would have been obvious to anyone familiar with us, I cropped the photos and blurred the video to conceal my face. Afterward, I went to bed and quickly fell asleep. Wednesday morning, I woke up early, turned my phone back on, and noticed another dozen missed calls and messages from Katie. I didn't listen to or read them, but I also didn't delete them. I called my boss and informed him I'd be taking the rest of the week off, then returned home after Katie had left for work to pack up more of my tools and personal belongings. During lunch, Katie called me again. This time I answered the call curtly, saying, "What?" Her response was delayed as she seemed taken aback that I had actually picked up. "Oh my God, Henry, please don't hang up. Where are you? We need to talk. We can work through this. Please just talk to me. Where did you stop? Please come home so we can resolve this. Please." Interrupting her, I said, "Katie, just listen for a moment. We'll meet on Saturday. I'll be there at 6 p.m. Make sure everyone who was with Larry and Sandy is there, except your guy. If he shows up, I'll deal with him again. He's not my guy, Henry. Besides, he's not really up for going out right now. As you say, Saturday at 6 o'clock. This isn't a party, it's a discussion. You and your friends can try to convince me why I shouldn't divorce you. I haven't listened to your messages, so be prepared for what you have to say. Tell your friends not to be late. Henry, please don't jeopardize our marriage over a trivial debt. When's the next poker night? Not sure, maybe in a couple more weeks. You don't have to attend if you don't want to. See you on Saturday." "All right. Henry, I love you. Please come back home. See you on Saturday." She simply couldn't grasp it. She believed the issue was merely my exaggerated reaction to what she perceived as fulfilling her obligation. She failed to perceive the larger picture. She genuinely didn't recognize her problem. Honoring the poker bet seemed more crucial to her than upholding our marriage vows. She hasn't reached her lowest point yet. The remainder of the week passed relatively calmly. I went to Walmart and purchased items necessary for my new apartment's bathroom, kitchen, and bedroom. I ended up buying more items than anticipated. Then I checked into a motel for the night. My evenings were spent researching divorce. We didn't have children, and with the house sale, we could each expect about $15,000. Our debts were minimal, and our incomes were similar. It should be relatively straightforward. On Saturday afternoon, I messaged Katie, requesting her to text me when everyone had gathered. I didn't want to endure an awkward silence while waiting for someone to arrive or have to rehash everything if someone was late. At 5:45, she messaged that everyone was already assembled and waiting in the dining room. At 5:55, I rang the doorbell of our house. "Honey, it's your house. No need to ring the doorbell," Katie mentioned, opening the door. "As you wish," I replied, passing by her. As I stepped into the dining room, I carried a small duffel bag stuffed with envelopes. All the dining furniture was passed down by Grandma Katie. The table was quite spacious for 10 people, with 4 chairs on each side and 1 at each end. Upon my arrival, 3 empty seats were beside me. Larry occupied the far right seat, while Sandy sat on the left with his back turned. To Sandy's left were 3 vacant seats beside Larry's right. Facing me were Paul, then Brian, followed by Mary, and finally Allison. Positioned at the head of the table to the left sat Terry. Katie brushed past me and settled in the middle of the 3 empty seats, hoping I'd take the seat next to her. I headed to the left end of the table where Terry was seated and stated, "This is my spot." Katie suggested, "You could sit next to me, Henry. Let's bet her on BJ that I'll sit here. Who knows, it might lead to something." "Katie, put your phone on record. I've got a hunch you'll need it someday." Without a word, Terry stood and shifted to the other side of Katie. An empty seat was to my right, where I placed my gym bag. Katie activated the recording app on her iPhone and positioned it on the table. Taking my seat, I surveyed the table. Following an uneasy silence, I addressed the gathering. "All right, we all know why we're here. I'm contemplating divorcing Catherine. If any of you care to persuade me otherwise, now's your chance. Terry, why don't you start?" "Look, Henry, I may not be the best person to advise on this. My wife cheated on me, and it led to our divorce. I'm truly sorry you're going through this." Clearly, Terry hadn't come prepared for the meeting. "Thanks, Terry. I appreciate your candor. I might have more questions later." I glanced around at the faces seated at the table. "Larry, what's your take on this?" I inquired. "It's no issue for me. She adores you, and she's gorgeous. Did you expect her to be a saint when you met her?" "No," I responded, "but I hoped she'd aspire to be one." Would you be okay if Sandy entertained other men after we got together? Larry fell silent, and Sandy squirmed in her chair. With my trademark sarcasm and purely in jest, I quipped, "So, how long have you two been openly cheating on each other?" Sandy blushed, and jaws dropped all around except for Larry's, who shot me a piercing look but remained silent. Katie blurted out, "Sandy, really?" Suddenly, Sandy had an honesty outburst. "We only did it 3 times. I hate it, but Larry insists we continue. I want to stop. I despise this." "All right, Sandy," I responded calmly. "Why don't you and Catherine discuss this later? You shouldn't feel pressured to do anything you're not comfortable with." "You know what an idiot you are," Larry erupted. "I warned Katie when she started dating you, and you couldn't handle poker, that you were an idiot and she should dump you. She should have left you long ago. You wrecked thousands of dollars worth of stuff in my house because your wife honored the bet. Maybe I should just trash everything here." "Come on," I replied calmly. "All this furniture belonged to your friend Catherine's grandmother. It means nothing to me." He sank back into his chair, breathing heavily, his glare fixed on me like a dagger. "Paul, Brian, any input from you guys?" "Listen, man," Paul started. "None of us want to see our friends split up. I mean, you guys have been part of our circle for years," I interjected. "No, Paul, you're not friends with us. You're friends with Catherine, and I'm her husband." "But you are friends with my wife," he argued. "That's what I thought. And then she just stood there silently while you 3 held me down, and my wife knelt in front of the other guy. But Mary didn't do anything. It was us." I glanced at Mary and Allison, who avoided my gaze and stared at the table. It seemed this conversation didn't unfold as they had hoped. "Answer me, Paul. You walk into a bar and spot your buddy Brian's wife in the far corner, on her knees in front of another guy. What do? You look. Do you call Brian and hope he arrives in time? Do you step in to stop her? Now imagine you're at the bar and you spot Brian in the same position. What do? Are you calling Allison? The thing is, I already know the answers. If it's Brian's wife, you intervene and inform Brian. If Brian's the one in the situation, you probably stay put and maybe even join in. Allison won't hear about it from you because Brian is your friend and Allison is your friend's wife. And what about you, Brian? Do you think I'm exaggerating?" Brian remained silent. "You see, the issue here is that Katie is your friend, not me. If Katie were to attack me, you wouldn't care because I'm just your friend's husband. I'm not your friend. If I hadn't walked into this room, none of you would have said a word to me. You'd all be thinking, all right, the ice is broken. Next time, I'll be the one making a bet with her." I glanced at Katie. "When did you lose respect for me?" "What do you mean, honey? I respect you more than anyone else I've ever known." "When did I first tell you that this was acceptable?" "Well, I never claimed it was," she replied softly. "How many times did this occur before last week?" "What? Never? Why are you so surprised by this question? Why should I trust you? If I hadn't witnessed it, would you have informed me? Would you wait until we got home and casually mention, 'Hey, honey, something odd happened at the card game tonight'?" That's the issue, Katie. You were ready to jeopardize our marriage, but not your cherished spot in the poker group. I came second to these idiots. I can't reconcile with that. I turned to Brian and Paul. You guys knew Katie would prioritize her damn poker spot over her marriage, and you encouraged her instead of reasoning with her. I addressed Brian and Paul, then turned to them. What would you do if you had to watch your wives with another man? They smirked and exchanged glances before facing me. Is she getting paid for this? Inquired Paul. Mary's jaw dropped. Not to be outdone, Brian chimed in. Will she gain any new skills? I simply grinned. So, when's the next poker game? They murmured to each other for a while. Then Brian asked, Are you interested? No, I replied. When's the next poker game? Catherine, I'm baffled why you're saying you won't return, yet you keep inquiring about the next gathering. Okay, I've had it. Let me lay it out. I retrieved my gym bag and emptied all the envelopes. Tonight, I was about to shatter a couple of marriages, but you know what? I believe they're already on the rocks. I stowed the envelopes back and replaced the bag. Catherine, you tore my heart out and actually enlisted your friends to restrain me while you did it. And you still don't see any wrongdoing? You not only betrayed me, but also shamelessly humiliated me. Clearly, your poker group status means more to you than I do. But the worst part, Catherine, is that these people aren't your friends. Real friends wouldn't subject you to this or allow you to inflict this on yourself. Katie started to interject. No, darling, you mean everything. Take it easy, Catherine. It's my turn now. You didn't even apologize. All you did was rationalize why you should settle your debts. You kept insisting we needed to move past this, yet you never acknowledged any wrongdoing. Even after all this, you still plan to attend poker nights. If you're willing to gamble carnal favors while I'm present, what would you wager when I'm not? Am I supposed to raise another person's child because you lost a bet and someone else impregnated you? We're through. You have a gambling issue. Seek help. I'll consult a lawyer on Monday. If you want your own attorney, go ahead. As far as I'm concerned, you can have almost everything, including your misguided friends. What an idiot you are, Brian remarked. Screw you, Brian, Allison retorted, surprising everyone. He's right about everything. You guys are wrecking his marriage to Katie for your own entertainment. He was on the verge of exposing you, claiming I slept with him, and I don't know why he didn't. You know I did. Henry, can I catch a ride with you? Another awkward silence lingered for about 10 seconds before Mary spoke up. You know what, Paul? I've had it, Mary asserted. I'm tired of carrying all the weight in this relationship. Henry's spot on. You hardly even sit by my side. Back before all this mess, Henry looked up to her. I always wished you'd treat me the way he treated her. It's the first time I've seen them not sitting together, not touching, not holding hands. It really infuriates me that you facilitated all this, Henry, she continued. Last Saturday, when it all went down, I was just as stunned as you were. I honestly thought it was some sick joke because I believe she loved you deeply. I'm truly sorry I didn't speak up then, but perhaps it's better for you to find out now, especially since you don't have children. Can I hitch a ride with you? We departed the house with Katie sobbing uncontrollably, Larry and Sandy bickering over the swing, and Paul and Brian exchanging threats of, if you don't come home today, don't bother coming back at all. Both girls stormed out, flipping the bird. I dropped off Allison and Mary at Allison's parents' house and returned to my motel. I polished off the remaining hard drinks in the room and devoured the last of the junk food. I eventually drifted off around midnight. The divorce proceeded smoothly. We sold the house and she stashed all the furniture in storage. I got everything I desired from a surprisingly modest house. Allison and Mary split from their spouses, and the three of us maintained a friends with benefits arrangement. Katie has been silent. Frankly, I was let down. I expected her to put up more of a fight, maybe push for counseling. Clearly, marriage meant less to her than it did to me. While I never developed romantic feelings for Mary or Allison individually, the three of us grew very close. A year after the infamous incident, I found myself in the bar Katya and I used to frequent for special occasions. The divorce had been finalized 4 months prior. As I sat there nursing my beer and missing Katya, I sensed someone behind me. I kept my gaze fixed on the wall, hoping they'd leave. I really wasn't in the mood to chat and wished they'd take the hint. Mind if I join you? I kept my head down, focusing on my drink. Sure, go ahead, have a seat. A nice guy like you, I'm surprised you're here by yourself. Well, I usually hang out with 2 wonderful friends, but they're on a double date. Funny you mention friends. Turns out mine weren't as great as I thought. I happened upon a couple of girls who mentioned there'd be a handsome, kind-hearted guy flying solo at this bar. Figured I'd come introduce myself. I'm Katie. I chuckled and played along. Pleasure to meet you, Katie. I'm Henry. Why are you here alone? Celebrating something? No, nothing to celebrate. I'm a relationship failure. Couldn't prevent my wife from cheating, so we divorced. My 2 closest friends are with other people. And you? Well, maybe I'm a failure too. Had the world's best boyfriend, loved me deeply, but I hurt him terribly. Cheated, and he divorced me. Did he do what was best for him or for me? Let's start with him. Not sure. You'd have to ask him. People say he's unhappy all the time. And you? It's been tough. His divorce plunged me into the darkest period of my life. Forced me to examine myself closely. Didn't like what I found. Started dependency counseling then and have kept at it since. My husband saw it coming, tried to warn me, but I didn't listen. In that sense, divorce was probably inevitable. My dependency would have eventually eroded his love for me. I never stopped loving you, Kat. Couldn't. I know, Henry. I get it. First, it's nice to hear you call me Katie or Kat again, not Catherine. I came to explain my actions and assure you it's not your fault. I know you know this, but I needed to say it. That poker night, I was sure I'd win. When I didn't, I paid up. Didn't even see it as cheating. Like a handshake. I worried they might ostracize me from the group. I never viewed it as a gamble on our marriage since I never imagined you'd leave. It never crossed my mind. I anticipated your anger, followed by forgiveness, seeing it as my duty. I believed you'd understand my need to honor my word. Frankly, I didn't think it was a big deal. But now I realize it's the most despicable, repulsive thing I've ever done to someone. Back then, I couldn't comprehend your seemingly irrational behavior. During therapy, when I recounted the fight and how you insisted I document it, The doctor praised your approach, calling you a genius. She expressed surprise at the endurance of our marriage. She also clarified why you were so fixated on the next poker night. Just so you're aware, there haven't been any more poker nights. I haven't touched a deck of cards since that evening, and I never will again. I haven't communicated with any of those guys since a couple of weeks after our argument. How's Sandy holding up? She's doing okay. She and Larry ended up divorcing. Turns out he was a terrible idiot, and she felt too embarrassed to speak up. Eventually, she decided to leave him. Now she's dating a coworker. Henry, you were spot on about everything. I prioritized this foolish poker group over everything else. I loved you wholeheartedly, and I knew you felt the same. I was confident you'd understand and be okay with it. If these people were genuine friends, things wouldn't have spiraled like this. I couldn't resist the pull of being part of that group. Allowing that idiot Mark to do what he did makes me sick with myself. Without your actions, I shudder to think how those games would have evolved. I'm deeply sorry for all the pain I caused you. I genuinely wish you a wonderful life. You deserve it. I'd genuinely like to maintain a friendship with you, but I understand if you're not up for it. I'll leave now before I start blubbering like a child. Give me a call. Katie rose and headed toward the door. Hey, Kat, I called after her. She paused but didn't turn back. Yes, Henry? Her shoulders trembled with tears. Have you eaten dinner yet? No, Henry, not yet, she replied, still facing away. I rose, approached her, wrapped my arm around her shoulders, guided her head to my shoulder, and led her to the door. Let's go grab a proper dinner. Katie and I rekindled our relationship, and a few months later we moved back in together. 9 months after that, we remarried at the courthouse, opting to keep the same anniversary date. True to her word, Katie gave up gambling entirely, even abstaining from joking bets. While some might say once a cheater, always a cheater, I don't believe that applies to Katie. I see her actions through the lens of her dependency, understanding that it led her to behavior she wouldn't otherwise engage in. Her motives weren't to shame me or seek another partner. She was battling her dependency. The guys from the poker group remained friends, except for Terry, who distanced himself. As for Mark, I never heard from him again. It seems he chose to leave town to avoid further discussion on the matter. Katie and I maintain friendships with Sandy, Allison, and Mary. Sandy has also quit playing poker. They've all agreed to be godmothers to our son.
I'm telling this, fully aware that many will dislike me for my actions and the consequences of my betrayal. Reading my own words is disgusting because I know what I did is unforgivable. I understand too well how needlessly tragic the events were. My hope is simply that my story can be shared with anyone in a relationship, and maybe it prevents future betrayals. Specifically, I hope someone cheating or thinking about it might read this and pause. Many might think my example of what can go wrong being unfaithful is a rare occurrence. People more knowledgeable than I am have told me my situation is sadly not unique. But I'm willing to take the hate I'll receive by sharing this if it prevents even one person from breaking a loved one's heart. I'm a 28-year-old woman, married to a wonderful man I'll call William. 8 months ago, he confronted me with proof I'd been emotionally and physically unfaithful. A few days later, he committed self-destruction. Typing those words out has caused people I don't even know to hate me. I couldn't believe I had the capacity to do something so evil, hurting someone I'd loved since childhood. But I did it. If you'd asked either me or William if either of us would ever be unfaithful, we both would have laughed. But to my shock, I allowed myself to lose focus and strayed. I knew it would destroy him if he ever found out. But I took the heart of the man I loved and crushed it so cruelly. He couldn't endure the pain of this life anymore. To those thinking I don't deserve to be breathing, I agree. I've attempted self-destruction twice. I'm convinced there's a reason I'm still here. For now, I've convinced myself that the longer I live, the more I suffer, and I don't deserve the mercy of self-destruction. Honestly, William and I grew up together. I can remember my early youth, and I always knew William. We were in the same Sunday school and public school classes. Our families were friends long before we came along. He always made me laugh. Kids can be mean, but William never was. I realized I thought he was cute in 6th grade, and it became an official crush in high school. William and I were each other's only loves from early high school through college. We were best friends and cherished each other. After graduation, we took a year to get stable jobs near our families and decided to get married. We took vacations together and were ravenous for each other. The only time closeness was off the table was during that time of the month. But we'd make love for hours, beautiful moments of passion. And I threw it all away for something tawdry, cheap, and worthless. We were planning to have children, knew their names, and were both pure. He was my first everything, and I was his. Part of me wishes I could say I had a drunken one-night stand, but no. I got involved with a man inferior to my husband. I didn't even consider the possibility that a friendship with another man could lead to an attachment forming. My husband and I had a strong marriage. As foolish as it sounds now, we really did. My husband was the epitome of strength, and I was the weak one. Before this, I considered myself a strong woman. It's just that no one ever told me that while our relationship was strong, no relationship is bulletproof. There's not a day that goes by that I don't wish someone had shot me before anything I did became secretive. It's an indisputable fact the world would be far better with my husband here instead of me. I had many chances to stop it before anything happened, and I had no reason to allow anything to happen. After a brief and heated conversation, he walked out, and I never spoke to him again. I tried to contact him in every way I could think of. I tried so many times just to let him know I'm truly sorry and that I hate what I did. My texts to him never showed anything but an unread status to me, so I doubt he read any emails or heard any voicemails. But everyone said I needed to give him space and time to think. 2 nights after William confronted me at 3:17 a.m., there was a loud knock at the front door. I turned on the lights, thinking it might be someone drunk wanting to curse me out, or worse. Then there was another loud knock, and I quickly put on a hoodie before going to the door. When I opened it and saw 2 policemen, I knew they could be there for many reasons, but I instantly understood why they were there. They told me my husband's body had been found due to an apparent self-destruction, and it devastated me. I dropped to my knees, wailing, tearing at my skin and hair as the police tried to calm me down. When the EMTs arrived, I was sitting on the steps, rocking back and forth, repeating apologies. I couldn't make it to the funeral, even if William's family had allowed my family to attend. I was kept sedated for days. The first thing I wanted to do when I got out was visit William's grave. But nobody knew where his parents had him buried, and that hurt deeply. That night, I attempted self-destruction for the first time. I've now been hospitalized twice for attempted self-destruction. I'm not asking for pity. In fact, I don't want it. Nothing can take away this heartache, and nothing can numb it. Part of me wishes I had somehow forced him to see me, just for a moment, to tell him how sorry I am and that I knew our marriage was over. But I didn't get that. No, I didn't deserve it. I have to face the fact that what I did was so vile that making my husband see me might have forced him to take his life even sooner. Many people have said my actions led him to take his life, and I don't doubt it. Until that horrible day, we were incredibly happy. No self-destruction note verified I caused his passing away. But we had been so happy, loving nearly every moment together. To go from that bliss to grief quickly ended him. I ended him. My words, actions, and thoughts betrayed us both. Regret doesn't damage you. If it did, I would have died before my husband ever confronted me. When COVID hit, William and I quarantined together. I taught at an exclusive private school, and our salary was assured as long as isolation was needed. William worked from home, making progress on a project. Despite the world's worries, we enjoyed our time together, getting closer. I am truly sorry for those who lost a loved one to the horrible disease. But my husband and I grew closer during those weeks. We joked about others struggling with family time. We simply couldn't get enough of each other. After the first month, we agreed to limit arguments to once a day for about a week. Our only argument during quarantine was about doing laundry, just to put clean sheets on the bed again. I cheated on that man, leading him to end his life due to my actions. I hate myself in many ways, but knowing I had it all is the most difficult pill to swallow. My affair with Paul, the lacrosse coach, started innocently during Zoom meetings. No attraction was present. When we met face to face, there was zero attraction, at least from me. But I didn't sense any lustful attention from him toward me. During that introduction, I learned he was engaged, and I told him I was happily married. No closeness tension, nothing hinting it would ever be a possibility. The school allowed half the staff and students to attend in person for a week, while the other half used Zoom. The next week they switched. This was to help with social distancing and the students' feelings of isolation. While eating lunch one day before my next class, I got an email from Paul asking me to edit toasts and jokes for his upcoming wedding. I was used to editing, so it was nothing. I felt important enough to tell William, and since it pertained to Paul's wedding, I saw no reason to bore my husband with details about that day. The email included a toast to Paul's parents and to the bride's parents. I took what he said and added a few phrases to tug at the heartstrings of all who attended. The jokes aimed at his brother, who was the best man, were really funny, but a bit too crude for my taste at a wedding. I mentioned this when I sent back his edited speeches. He laughed it off, saying I didn't understand his family's sense of humor, which included teasing. This email exchange marked several months of back-and-forth communication, but surprisingly, nothing inappropriate happened until the very end. Throughout our conversations, there was never any flirting or escalation. We did discuss taxes, but our talks were purely scientific and psychological, making even the biggest nymphomaniac in history drier than the Sahara. The discussions about race, politics, religion, science, and sports sometimes got heated. I was called prudish for my tax opinions, but I enjoyed the discussions, confident there was no temptation on either end. All of this occurred during work hours. My husband and I had a landline for emergencies, and once we were home, our smartphones were turned off. Paul didn't even have my number to text until I emailed him with a witty remark. Late in the day, he asked for my number to counter what I'd sent. Many coworkers had my email, so I didn't think much of it. I genuinely believe Paul had no interest in pursuing me, as he was smitten with his fiancée at the time. However, about a month before their wedding, Paul discovered his girlfriend had been having an affair with her high school boyfriend for over a year. He was shocked and deeply hurt. Unintentionally, I became the person he vented to. I'm not sure when our conversations crossed a line, but I started feeling genuinely sorry for Paul. I despised his fiancée for what she did, and I saw nothing wrong with that. After a particularly tough night for him, he looked frazzled at school, and I could tell he'd been crying. I gave him a hug, and he asked if we could talk after school. Since I had a few hours before William got home, I agreed. In hindsight, I realized what drew me into conversations with Paul was a different opinion. William and I had discussed almost every imaginable topic, and I usually knew his response. Most of the time, I craved surprise or verbal conflict. It was foolish, pathetic, and weak, but that led to the affair. Everything with William was perfect, and we spent every available moment together. I mentioned a coworker named Paul to William, but as nothing was happening, I didn't elaborate, and he saw no reason to pry. When William had to go out of town for 3 weeks, we FaceTimed daily, and I missed him intensely. With sudden spare time, I found myself texting Paul just to pass the time. Instead of occasional conversations, Paul and I often had dinner and drinks before going home. Oddly enough, what led to us becoming physical was me spraining my ankle and the school nurse being unavailable that week. I hurt my ankle and went to Paul, assuming he, as a coach, had numbing spray or an ACE bandage. While he was tending to my ankle, I noticed he had an apparent hardness. I was surprised until I realized he could see slightly up my skirt from his position. For a moment, I found it stimulating that I was turning him on. I adjusted myself to see if a slightly better view would arouse him more. He called me out on it, and I laughed, telling him to work out his frustrations with his girlfriend. Suddenly, he kissed me, and I pushed him away. He kissed me again, and this time I didn't resist. We made out for a few minutes before I snapped out of it, hurriedly left his classroom, and sat in my own classroom in disbelief of what had just happened. I didn't intend for it to happen, and I'm sure Paul didn't either. Unsure whether to call William immediately or wait until he got home that night, I spoke to Paul after classes. He apologized, advised me not to bring conflict into my marriage, and suggested we stay friends. With William out of town and focused on work, I didn't want to add more stress. After discussing Tulsa with William that night, I decided to wait until he got home. His company faced issues, causing delays and extending William's stay by 2 weeks. Paul was there for me to discuss what had happened between us. I couldn't confide in my female friends or family, who all loved William. If I had known, maybe strangers on a site like this would have been the best option. Unfortunately, I vented to the last person I should have. One Friday after work, Paul and I went to a new restaurant for dinner. We sat at the bar, had a few drinks, and I explained my unease about telling my husband. Paul asked how I thought William would take the news, and I suggested he might want to call in sick. The next day, I told William. He asked if I thought he would fight Paul, and I said no. However, I knew it would mean the end of Paul and I talking. Paul confessed he might not have made it through his breakup without me. I assured him I was glad to help and didn't regret it. As the realization that our friendship would end sank in, we both felt a bit depressed. We drank too much, and I ended up at Paul's apartment doing more than kissing. As soon as it was over, guilt set in. Yes, it should have set in earlier, but I knew my marriage was over. William and I had both said society allows too many second chances for those who don't deserve them. While we believe cheaters deserve a second chance, it could never be with the betrayed spouse. Things got complicated when William returned from Tulsa. I was having my period, so I knew there would be no closeness between us. Thankfully, I wouldn't have subjected my husband to diseases, despite wanting to make love to William one last time. I couldn't allow that. I wrote a long letter, confessing what I'd done and planned to give it to William after a face-to-face confession. To this day, I don't know how William discovered what was going on. He may have been monitoring my online conversation with Paul from day one. I never got to ask him how he found out, and the realization that he learned about my betrayal before I could tell him caused me to fall to my knees, swearing I planned to confess. William didn't believe me, and I wouldn't have either. He had a stack of texts between Paul and me printed out, though I didn't deny any of the accusations. That honesty came far too late. He packed a few things and left me on a Monday evening. Wednesday night, he drove to a shopping center, parked his car, and took his own life. Knowing I had destroyed our relationship tortured my soul like never before. Realizing I robbed him of a chance to find someone else to be happy with broke me. The understanding that I didn't just end my relationship with William, but every relationship he had or would have filled me with more guilt than I could ever express. I could discuss everything that has occurred since William's passing, but many details might not interest most people. Simply put, his family and mine hold strong negative feelings towards me. My family remains disgusted by my actions, and their disappointment and shame persist. Their love for me endures, but the sense of disappointment and shame will never fade, and rightly so. The outcomes were not what I intended, but when choices lead to pain and suffering, we bear the guilt of causing that grief. I see a therapist twice a week to work through things. Through my therapist, I met someone genuinely helping me sort through my feelings. Years ago, she intentionally set a small fire as a joke, but it quickly spread, causing multiple endings of life. We've discussed various aspects of her story and mine. Things can't be the way they once were, nor should they. To keep living, I need a plan to make the remaining part of my life as meaningful as possible. So, that's essentially my story. If anyone wants to post hate messages and call me a wretched person, go right ahead. If it helps you release your rage, consider me your verbal punching bag. For those who have been cheated on, some of you may have been intentionally betrayed. But those who had a partner just as perplexed about the cheating as you were, listen to my story. It doesn't justify anything I did. Quite the opposite. But if it helps you understand that you bear little responsibility for the infidelity, so be it. To unrepentant cheaters, I hope you listen to my cautionary tale and recognize your ability to destroy not just someone else, but also your relationships and a significant part of yourself. I know I can't preach or judge anyone but myself. I just hope no one finds their William and loses them or sinks to the depths I did. Most importantly, I want people in great relationships to cherish and never take them for granted. Humans aren't immune to being swayed under the wrong conditions. When we love someone, we carry part of their soul with us. One betrayal makes it impossible for that person to hold that piece of you again. I had my husband's heart in my hands, and now I deserve never to hold it again, nor will he ever hold mine. This life has too much pain without hurting the ones we love. Love is too precious to risk on anything. Update. I cheated, causing my husband to commit self-destruction days after confronting me. This is intended as a final response. William likely didn't read it, and considering he's been dead a year, I doubt it was him. For those trying to psychoanalyze me, I appreciate the effort, even if it was for your own self-interests. Professionals haven't provided a good theory for why I let things happen. I feel like there should be some valid reason why I did what I did too. I just can't come up with one, and it wouldn't be a valid reason if I found one. For those thinking this is fake, I can't fathom a reason to post this other than to warn and perhaps help. It wasn't a karma grab. I've barely responded, so it wasn't for attention, and it certainly wasn't to lift my spirits because I've rightfully been slammed for my betrayal. Admitting to something horrible is not easy. Imagining it never happened doesn't help me, but you all do. I do not keep in contact with Paul and have not heard from him since before William committed self-destruction. The only things I know about him are secondhand from people I worked with. I have no interest in being with Paul or having him in my life in any way. So those thinking I planned my vile actions to ride off into the sunset with a first-year lacrosse coach? No, bless you all. May you have stellar lives full of happiness, but most of all, peace.
I was married to my wife for 4 years, and our marriage faced challenges due to her struggle with drinks. Even before we tied the knot, I knew she enjoyed drinking, particularly at parties. She was the kind of person who loved to indulge in drinks during social events. We first met at a club where she and her friends were celebrating a birthday. I was instantly attracted to her and approached her in the group. That night, we talked and spent the rest of the evening at the club. After meeting, we went home together because she asked if she could come with me. On that first night, we became faithful. Despite my wife thinking I was only interested in a one-night stand, I felt differently. I genuinely liked her, and our closeness deepened my feelings for her in the following weeks. We started dating after spending time together at least twice a week for 3 months. At the time, she had just finished college and was working hourly jobs until she could land her desired job. Early on, I knew she had a drinking issue, but I didn't expect it to escalate to the point of needing rehab after over a year of dating. We got married, officially moved in together, and unfortunately, a year later, she lost her parents and only sibling in a tragic accident. This intensified her emotional struggle, leading her to cope with the pain through excessive drinking. I thought her extreme drinking might be a temporary response to mourning, but it persisted. Months after the burial, she didn't recover from her family's loss, becoming a shadow of her former self. Despite my efforts to comfort her, she was in a dark mental state. Around the same time, she experienced a breakdown, adding to her emotional turmoil. She stopped working, and the responsibility of caring for both of us fell on me. On days when she wasn't drinking, she displayed aggression and anger over trivial matters. I walked in on my wife making out with a neighbor, and I was really angry. She was drunk, but he seemed sober. I kept the neighbor away and informed his wife, yet I couldn't take any action against my wife, thinking she wasn't in the right state of mind. I was wrong because a few days later, I caught her talking to the same neighbor. When she saw me, she immediately walked away. Meanwhile, her drinking problem worsened. If I gave her money, she'd spend it all on drinks, reaching a point where she couldn't go a day without drinking. I got frustrated and tired of putting up with her, handling bills alone and still caring for her. It became overwhelming, so I decided to get her help when there was no other option. I informed her I was taking her to rehab, and after several months of persuasion, she finally went. Seeing a significant improvement, I was relieved to be getting my wife back. As a concerned husband, I finally found peace as she broke free from her bad habits and started rebuilding her life. However, my relief didn't last. One day, while enjoying YouTube at home, my wife announced she was marrying the love of her life. I didn't take it seriously at first and just laughed it off. But when she mentioned her rehab coach, Ryan, I became attentive. According to her, Ryan was the one for her, and they were in love, planning to get married. She praised him for treating her well, talking nicely, and more. I was shocked and knew she was going crazy. The Ryan she talked about was already a married man with 2 kids, making no sense. I was sure she didn't come up with the marriage idea on her own, so I confronted Ryan on her next meeting day. When I shared everything my wife said, Ryan said she was delusional. Somehow, my wife had overheard his responses. She had been eavesdropping on her conversation. Upon hearing him, she left her hiding spot, tears streaming from her eyes. She sobbed like a baby and simultaneously showed me a video of her and Ryan, both with nothing on in bed and the bathroom. Ryan had recorded it during their last hotel encounter and sent it to her. She claimed Ryan vowed to divorce his wife so they could marry. When she presented the video, Ryan, angered, berated her, calling her foolish for thinking he'd leave his wife for an unstable woman. His words shattered her heart. I'd never seen my wife cry like that since losing her family. It became clear she truly loved Ryan, even planning to divorce me for him, which deeply saddened me. I was furious with Ryan for exploiting my wife, his client. To give him a taste of his own medicine, I pressed charges using the video as evidence in court. Sharing this is easy because the hurt and heartbreak almost shattered me. Despite the challenges my wife presented, I still loved her and tried to help her return to normal. Unfortunately, she cheated on me in return, planning to divorce me for her rehab coach. I felt pity for her when she discovered Ryan's deceit and nearly fell into depression. Out of compassion, I admitted her to a mental hospital, and after her admission, I initiated a divorce. Although it seemed she wasn't in her right state of mind, she was clear-headed enough to consider divorcing me. Honestly, our relationship was a significant waste of time, resources, and emotions, but I'll view it as a life lesson. Here's a piece of free advice. Some women aren't worth the sacrifices most men make. Even if you give them the universe, they might still find an excuse to cheat. Regarding Ryan, I won the court case, and he received a jail term for exploiting his mentally unstable client. The government also shut down his business. I often miss my wife, but I won't let her problems excuse breaking our marital vows and cheating on me.